Hey guys, tonight we're stepping behind the velvet curtains, like literally, into the royal bedchambers of history. You know, the ones where silk sheets and scandal went hand in hand. Palaces may glitter with gold and marble, but underneath the luxury they were breeding grounds for obsession, betrayal, and let's be honest, some of the most awkward, over-choreographed sexual encounters in human history. If you're imagining steamy candlelit passion, you might want to adjust your expectations. This isn't a romance novel, it's a highly scheduled, gossip-prone reality show with crowns. And let me warn you right now, you probably won't survive this. No, seriously, if you were actually in a palace during any era of monarchical power, odds are you'd either be executed for looking at the wrong person's spouse or accidentally poisoned by a jealous lover. But hey, you're not there. Not really. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the time you're watching this. I'm curious who's tuning in from a bathtub in Paris or a midnight bus ride in Seoul. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step quietly through a hallway padded in tapestries, no shoes door. The stone floor is cold under your feet, but the air is thick, warm, perfumed and vaguely sour, like someone's tried to mask too many bodily secrets with crushed roses. You've been summoned, but not told why. That's how things work here. You're at the palace and everything, including desire, is arranged around the needs of the crown. In front of you, a pair of polished doors. You don't knock, you're expected. You push them open and step into the royal bedchamber, where almost nothing is ever private and everyone has something to gain. The bed itself is a monstrosity. Not just large, it's ceremonial. Draped in velvet and trimmed with gold thread, it's surrounded by heavy curtains that don't actually conceal much. Why? Because in many royal courts, sex wasn't just allowed to be watched, it was required to be. For example, in France, under the Ancien Regime, it was customary for high-ranking courtiers to witness the royal couple's wedding night. That's right, not just verify the marriage, but literally confirm consummation. One historical fact that makes you shift uncomfortably. In the court of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the couple's wedding night was publicly gossiped about for years because they didn't consummate right away. The entire kingdom speculated why. Was he too shy? Was she too inexperienced? Was something anatomically off? All this was whispered in salons while sipping chocolate. Romantic, right? But tonight, it's not your wedding night. You're just a visitor in the gilded mess. And already you've noticed the peculiar layout of the room. One side is clearly designed for official business, chairs for advisors, a small writing desk. The other, much more lavish, is for what the records call private life, though it's hardly that. Everything here has meaning. Every position of a pillow could signal favour or disapproval. If you leave your slippers too close to the fire, someone might think you spent the night and report it. A courtier shuffles in, tall, powdered wig, eyes like a fox. He bows but doesn't meet your gaze directly. He's here to check that things are in order. No, not like a butler, like an informant. You're being assessed. Are your cheeks flushed? Hair tousled? Is your gown wrinkled in a way that suggests activity? He'll write it all down for someone higher up. Everyone has a role in the royal ecosystem, and some people's entire jobs revolve around documenting who's doing what with whom and when, and the gossip doesn't just travel fast, it's weaponized. Maybe you lingered too long by the wine fountain at last night's masquerade. Maybe you brushed hands with the wrong duke. That could land you in tonight's official rumour roll call. If you're lucky, it's only whispers. If you're unlucky, it's meanwhile or worse. A fringe fact you weren't expecting. In the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, there were reports of bedroom heralds, unofficial but persistent messengers who specialised in collecting erotic rumours to trade for court influence. Literal pillow talk merchants. The sheer performativity of it all is exhausting. You haven't even made eye contact with a royal, and already you feel like your body isn't entirely your own. That's the strange thing about palace life. Intimacy is never just about desire. It's about power. Who gets touched? Who gets ignored? Who gets to say no? And who can't? And let's not pretend this was ever about love. Most royal marriages were diplomatic contracts, often arranged when the parties involved were children or in some cases hadn't even met yet. So when passion did ignite, it rarely followed the official script. It sparked in shadows, in locked garden gates, in stolen notes passed through servants who are never paid enough to keep secrets. But right now, you're still standing in that lavish bedchamber, watching as a maid pulls back the sheets and fluffs the pillows. You almost laugh. Someone is expected soon. Not you, but someone of rank. And that's another rule. Your rank determines how you're seduced, when you're summoned, and whether your story ends in scandal or in silence. An open scholarly debate. How much of royal sex culture was genuinely erotic, and how much was just performance for political stability? Some historians argue that rituals like bedding ceremonies and court-sanctioned mistresses served as pressure valves for a system under constant tension. Others think it was a smokescreen for deeper dysfunction, a way of keeping everyone distracted while power consolidated elsewhere. Back in the present moment, you're dismissed with a nod. You step back into the hallway, heart beating a little faster, overwhelmed not by what you saw, but by what was expected of you. And this was just the beginning, because as you'll learn, the deeper you go into royal palaces, the less real privacy exists, and the more dangerous pleasure becomes. You wake before dawn if you ever really slept at all. The palace doesn't sleep, at least not like normal people do. It drifts in and out of waking dreams, buzzing with whispers behind closed doors, heels echoing down stone corridors, keys turning in locks that no one admits exist. You're summoned again. Of course you are. Last night was only the beginning. This morning you'll learn what it really means to be part of the royal bedchamber agenda. That's right, agenda. Because here, even sex runs on a schedule. You're escorted by a valet whose cologne is stronger than his discretion. He doesn't speak, but his side-eye tells you everything. Someone has chosen you for attention today. Whether it's good or bad, you'll find out later. You're led not to a bedroom, but a chamber that feels oddly administrative. Velvet-lined chairs, gilded mirrors, a small writing table piled with parchment. On the wall, an oil painting of the reigning monarch, looking vaguely disapproving as always. A woman in a dark green gown, crisp and intimidating, greets you without smiling. She's the mistress of the bedchamber, not a lover, but the senior-most lady in charge of the royal household's intimate logistics. And yes, that's a thing. She informs you quite dryly that the Queen's evening duties are scheduled for the following night and must be prepared accordingly. There will be a bath, linens changed, and aromatic oils chosen. The Queen's temperature will be recorded, as will yours. And, she pauses, arching an eyebrow, if fertility is in question, an attending physician will observe. Ah, romance. You nod, even though your brain is screaming. There's no such thing as a private moment here. Even the act of conception has been institutionalized. One historical fact to put it into perspective. In 18th century France, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were not only expected to produce an heir, but their private life was so heavily monitored that court physicians debated their anatomy in letters. It took them 7 years to finally consummate their marriage, and during that time, the entire court speculated about everything from Marie's libido to Louis's foreskin. No, really. There were pamphlets. It was basically royal fan fiction. As you listen to the instructions being rattled off, you realise how much of palace life is choreographed. Bedtimes are monitored, or curtains opened and closed according to status. The order of who dresses and undresses whom is strict, and in the case of the royal couple, even the presence of bystanders during bedtime is common. In some courts, such as the Habsburgs, it was routine for courtiers to be in the room during the king's evening routine, not out of nosiness, but because transparency was part of maintaining royal virtue. Yes, because nothing says virtue like 6 powdered wigs watching you crawl into bed. There's an odd moment of silence. You realise she's waiting for you to choose tonight's bedding fragrance. You glance at the carved wood box she opens. Inside are sachets of dried lavender, ambergris, rose petals, and something that smells oddly like musty cinnamon. You pick the ambergris mostly because it sounds mysterious, but also because it's made from whale secretions, and that feels on brand for this ridiculous institution. She nods. Excellent choice, stimulating but not vulgar. She then makes a note on a small scroll and rings a bell. 2 servants appear instantly and vanish down a corridor, presumably to begin whatever arcane rituals transform a bed into a politically charged love arena. You ask hesitantly, if all this is really necessary. She actually laughs. Necessary? Her smile is like a knife sliding out of its sheath. Darling, if the wrong person hears you used rose instead of ambergris tonight, you could be accused of seduction, or worse, of trying to interfere with the succession. You blink. She's not joking. This isn't Downton Abbey. This is chess with hormones. A fringe fact floats through your memory, something you once overheard a drunk court tutor say. In Renaissance Florence, nobles would sometimes hire astrologers to choose the exact hour and position for conception to ensure a male heir. Moon in Leo, Venus ascending, all that. If the child turned out sickly or, heaven forbid, a girl, the mother might be accused of defying the stars on purpose. Your mind drifts to the queen. You haven't seen her yet, but you've heard the stories. That she once slapped a duke for kissing her hand too long. That she has a collection of Venetian masks she wears when she doesn't want to be recognised. That she's terrifying in person, beautiful in a way that makes men forget their alliances. You're not sure which parts are true, but you know one thing. Tonight you're part of her script. A quiet knock. A physician enters, followed by a woman carrying a small brass scale and a glass vial of something disturbingly milky. You brace yourself. The physician begins his inspection. Not of you, thankfully, but of the room. He checks the humidity, the oil temperature, and the proximity of the bed to the fireplace. All this will be recorded in the royal ledger under something hilariously euphemistic like wellness conditions. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. An open scholarly debate. Were these routines truly about fertility and health, or were they just symbolic theatre meant to keep the court under control? Some historians argue that these rituals were designed to create a sense of sacred order in a chaotic world. Others believe it was all about surveillance, ensuring that no bastard children diluted the bloodline, no secret affairs ruined alliances. Whatever the reason, it meant that people like you had to live on the edge of absurdity and tension at all times. The day passes in a blur of lace, powdered sugar, and overheard scandals. You find yourself in the palace garden after lunch, pretending to admire the chrysanthemums while a baron whispers something salacious about the Archduchess's extended stay in the hunting lodge. By sunset, you're summoned back. The bed has been turned down, the fragrance lingers, musky, oceanic, and vaguely unsettling. As you climb into your own modest bed hours later, you lie still and stare at the ceiling. You can hear footsteps above you, a soft moan, the unmistakable creak of one of the royal canopy beds. You're not even sure which royal is involved tonight, but it doesn't matter. In this palace, everyone's in the performance, even when they're not on stage. Morning comes again, though the word morning feels generous. Time in the palace is more of a suggestion than a rule. Everyone's either rising too early or staying up too late. Today, though the light feels different, colder, stiffer. You know something is coming, you're summoned. Not to the Queen's Wing this time, but to a corridor off the main chapel, quiet and thick with incense. A woman you don't recognise waits there with two other maids and a grim little basket. She doesn't introduce herself, but her tone makes it clear she's here on official intimate business. You're to observe the bedding ceremony preparations, she says flatly, like it's a punishment. You follow, not sure what that means exactly, but not wanting to ask too many questions. Turns out you won't need to. The room you enter is a flurry of pale linen, polished brass, and embroidered pillows. In the centre is a bed, freshly made, stiff as a military parade, and two women in cream-coloured shifts, nervously sipping something warm from delicate ceramic cups. One of them, you realise with a start, is the bride. She doesn't look old enough to drink wine, let alone marry a duke with gout and a legitimate claim to half the northern coastline. Her hands are shaking. You don't blame her, because tonight is not just her wedding night, it's her virginity inspection. Yes, that was a thing, still is, in some corners of the world, but we'll stick to the royal version. Historically, especially in Europe during the medieval and Renaissance eras, the consummation of a marriage between royals wasn't just expected, it had to be proven. The bride's virginity was often declared beforehand by a midwife or a court doctor, then confirmed again after the wedding night by inspecting the sheets for blood. If none appeared, well, let the panic begin. A historical fact that's both disturbing and depressingly routine. In 15th century Spain, royal brides could be required to undergo pre-wedding physical examinations by physicians or matrons to confirm virginity. These weren't private either. Accounts were documented, sometimes read aloud in court. Imagine your love life starting with a medically notarized memo to your in-laws. The young bride is being told what to expect, not by her mother, she's not present, but by the same stone-faced matron who greeted you. There will be witnesses, she says, matter of fact. They will remain behind the curtain until the act is complete. Then the linens will be collected and the announcement made. The bride nods once, then stares at the cup in her hands as if it might poison her or You can't decide what's worse, the pressure to perform or the fact that so many people are eagerly waiting for evidence of it. And here's the twist. This isn't about sex, not really. It's about legitimacy. If a queen or noblewoman didn't come to her marriage intact, then any child she produced could be questioned, bastardized, disinherited. Wars have been fought over less. Royal virginity wasn't personal, it was national security. One fringe fact, in 16th century France, there was a short-lived tradition of cheering at the moment the couple reappeared after their wedding night, cheering specifically if the bride looked flushed or dazed. It was seen as a sign of success. If she looked too composed, the rumours started before breakfast. You're instructed to help with the linens. The marriage sheets, as they're called, are soft but coarse, clearly chosen for their absorbency. You try not to think too hard about that. Everything must be prepared exactly right. The chamber is warm, intentionally so you suspect, and every candle is placed for both ambience and light. It's not romance, it's strategy. You wonder what the groom is being told, if anything at all. Probably not much, he'll be drunk or pretending to be. He's twice the bride's age, though to be fair, that's considered lucky around here. You once heard a story, maybe a lie, about a duchess who married at 14 to a man in his 70s. She survived him by 40 years and refused to remarry. Probably because she never wanted to see a naked man again. An open, scholarly debate that scholars still circle around with caution. How much autonomy did royal women really have in these situations? Some argue that queens and noblewomen learned to play the system, that they developed their own forms of sexual power and subtle rebellion. Others point out that when your entire future depends on producing an heir, any sense of agency is mostly illusion. As the hour approaches, the bride is gently led away, her shift replaced with something finer. She doesn't cry, which somehow makes it worse. The room is cleared except for a few designated witnesses, older women mostly, who sit in silence like bored jury members. You stand with them, unsure why you've been included. Maybe to make sure someone else doesn't steal the sheets, or swap them, or add fake blood, which has happened before. History is full of desperate brides and creative maids. The door creaks open, and the groom appears. He's red-faced and smells like spiced mead. He nods, says something inaudible to the bride, then disappears with her behind the embroidered curtain. No one speaks. You listen. The sounds are hard to place. Fabric, a few quiet words, a muffled grunt, and then silence. A moment passes, then another. A cough from one of the older women. Eventually the curtain parts. The bride reappears, escorted back to her chair. Hair slightly mussed. She looks dazed, maybe exhausted. A maid steps forward and collects the linens, folds them neatly into the ceremonial basket, and hands them to the matron, who checks them. You can't help but peek. There's a stain, small but visible. The matron nods. Confirmed, one word, that's it. No applause, no congratulations, just confirmation. The marriage is now real. The heir, whenever he comes, will be considered valid, or at least harder to dispute. You exhale. You're not sure why. Maybe because it's over, or maybe because the whole thing feels like a ritual older than language, older than consent, and just like that, the bride is dismissed, sent to Roas. She walks with slow, stiff steps and vanishes into her private chamber. The witnesses murmur, then depart. The sheets, meanwhile, are sent off for preservation. Yes, that's not a joke. In many royal families, the marriage linens were kept in state archives, or burned in ceremonies if things went poorly. Either way, history loves receipts. You return to your own quarters in silence, your head buzzing with thoughts. It's not the ceremony itself that unsettles you. It's how normal it's become, how routine. In this palace, even your most personal moments are part of a public record. You begin to wonder how anyone finds intimacy here at all. You try to forget the linens, you really do, but it's hard to unsee something that ceremonial. Especially when you pass the matron in the corridor the next day, and she gives you a barely perceptible nod, as if you've now joined the club of people who've seen too much and can't ever leave. That's the thing about palace life. Once you've been near the bedchambers, everyone assumes you know, whether you do or not. Today your instructions are different. No ceremonies, no inspections, just an invitation, if you can call it that, from a lady in waiting whose smile doesn't match her eyes. The Queen wishes you to observe the corridor outside the East Chamber after supper, she says, like it's a weather report. You may bring a fan or embroidery if you like, something discreet. You blink, you nod, you don't ask why because by now you understand the code. Observe means wait for something scandalous, and discreet means keep your mouth shut about it. The East Chamber is one of the oldest parts of the palace. Stone walls, draughty arches, it smells of damp wood and old perfume. You arrive early and choose a small chair by a decorative alcove, pretending to admire the tapestry of a unicorn in distress. By the time the candles are lit and the rest of the court is busy with supper, the hallway quiets, and then it begins. A door creaks open somewhere nearby. Soft footsteps, a flicker of movement behind the wall of velvet curtain. You glance sideways and see her, the Marchioness of Anvers. Not important enough to make laws, but just important enough to ruin someone else's life. She's wrapped in a silk robe, hair pinned high, lips just a little too red for nighttime prayers. She checks her reflection in the mirror, then glances down the hall, then disappears into the chamber. 5 minutes later, another figure. A man this time, younger. Not her husband. Not anyone's husband, actually. Just a minor cousin of the king. The kind of royal so low on the inheritance chain he's practically a civilian. But good looking. Far too good looking. He moves like someone who knows he's being watched, but doesn't care. He doesn't knock. He just slips inside. You sit there, fan in hand, pretending to cool your face. No one else is nearby, no guards, no maids, just you, the door, and the knowledge that something highly forbidden is happening 15 feet away. And somehow this feels even more intimate than anything you saw during that awkward wedding night. Here's the truth. The most passionate encounters in the palace don't happen in the grand bedchambers. They happen in borrowed rooms, guest quarters, music closets, behind hanging tapestries during balls. That's where people actually touch each other, where no witnesses record bloodstains or light incense, just fingers, breaths, risk. A historical fact that proves the point: Catherine the Great, yes, the empress with a notoriously exaggerated reputation, was known for keeping a favourites list, but most of her real relationships were quiet, managed through secret doorways and coded letters. Her guards would escort lovers in and out of the palace through side entrances, often at night to avoid gossip. Of course, there they failed. There's always gossip. You're still sitting there, and you're starting to realise that your presence isn't just coincidental. You're not a secret witness. You're a buffer. The Queen doesn't want guards involved, too official, but she wants someone to know, someone quiet, someone whose loyalty is untested but promising. You're the test. Time drips by, the door opens again. The young man slips out, robe slightly askew, cheeks flushed. He doesn't see you, or pretends not to. The Marchioness appears moments later, walking the opposite direction, feigning a limp. You stifle a laugh. She's good, not great, but good natural. That's the game here. Perform well, but not too well. A love affair that's too discreet is useless, it garners no power. But if it's too obvious, it becomes ammunition. The sweet spot is in the middle. Just enough mystery to make the corridors buzz, but not enough to spark a duel. A fringe fact that makes the whole thing even more absurd. In 17th century England, Charles II's court included the wits, a group of nobles who were unofficially ranked by the cleverness of their sexual conquests. They wrote limericks about each other's exploits and passed them around like collectible cards. One poem described a tryst that supposedly took place in the king's library between two people who were married to other people. And yet here's what you keep noticing. The people involved in these escapades rarely look happy. They look alert, electric, but not joyful. Because even when passion flares, it comes with strings. You may gain favour, but you may also gain enemies. The Marchioness might get a pearl necklace from the Queen next week, or she might be sent to a convent. That's the gamble. An open scholarly debate that threads through all this. Did people in royal courts engage in affairs for love or for leverage? Some historians claim passion was real. Fleeting, yes, but real. Others argue that with so much surveillance, genuine emotion was almost impossible. Every touch calculated, every smile rehearsed. The heart didn't stand a chance. You rise finally, long after the hallway has gone quiet. No one comes to relieve you, no one checks in. That's the other thing, the palace runs on unsaid rules. If you saw something, you didn't. If you say something, you won't be invited to dinner ever again. Or worse, you'll find yourself reassigned to a post in the stables, where the only whispers are from horses. Back in your room. You wonder how many trysts are happening at this very moment. You picture a network of corridors and doorways, each lit with its own tiny forbidden flame. How many people are sneaking through hidden passageways? How many have secret lovers behind titles and alliances? How many of them are in love? And how many are just trying not to be forgotten? You press your hand to the cool window pane and stare out over the palace grounds. Somewhere out there, the queen is asleep, or pretending to be. Somewhere else, someone's waking up in the wrong bed, or the right one, depending on the hour. And you're in the middle of it now, maybe not by choice, but certainly by design. You don't even flinch when the knock comes now. It's not fear anymore. It's fatigue. You've stopped asking what time it is, because what does that even mean in a palace? Morning is when the drapes are drawn. Night is when the candles drip low. Reality here doesn't follow the sun. It follows whoever's got the crown. So when a page appears with flushed cheeks and a message scrawled on heavy parchment, Her Majesty requests your attendance during the early court, you just nod, slip on your softest slippers, and follow the sound of scandal down the corridor. The court is awake in the way snakes are awake, still tense, waiting. You slip into the long hall just as the Queen enters, trailed by attendants who wear their silence like armour. She's radiant, of course. Queens don't do hangovers even when they should. Her gown shimmers like the inside of a seashell, and her eyes sweep the room like someone searching for a mosquito she fully intends to execute. She doesn't speak until everyone is seated. Then, let us talk about appetite. Not food, obviously. You're talking about power. The kind you taste. The kind that melts in your mouth when someone kneels at your feet. Not out of worship, but because you've made yourself too dangerous to resist. The Queen begins describing, almost lazily, how she once received a gift from a foreign prince, a carved box of figs, each stuffed with pomegranate seeds and little slips of silk embroidered with his poetry. Everyone laughs, of course, because what else can they do? But she isn't joking. Not really. This was seduction, mailed across borders, and that, she says, is when she knew she'd won the treaty, before the ink ever dried. One historical fact that lands with a thud. Cleopatra's early letters to Julius Caesar weren't just political. They were laced with double meanings, sweet references to honey and harvest. Metaphors that Roman historians struggled to interpret without blushing. And it worked. She secured Egypt's survival with a blend of wit, politics, and undeniably practiced allure. But this isn't Egypt. This is your Queen's court, where sex isn't scandal, it's strategy. Power doesn't just come from bloodlines or battlefields, it comes from desire. And no one knows that better than the people sitting here. It's all you. Sipping rosewater and pretending not to look too interested. The Duke of Cardon clears his throat and offers some dreary comment about the spiritual benefits of restraint. He's met with a smile so sharp it could gut a deer. The Queen leans forward, eyes bright. And yet, Your Grace, your restraint didn't stop you from sending Lady Sareth a ruby garter for Lent. The room freezes. Lady Sareth, currently seated directly across from the Duke, blinks very slowly, then smiles as though her heart isn't pounding loud enough to rattle the ceiling. She adjusts her shawl. It was red for martyrdom, she says sweetly. The Queen laughs, everyone laughs, but the message is clear, nothing goes unnoticed. You realise in this moment how carefully the Queen walks this tightrope. She doesn't need to sleep with anyone to wield sexual power. In fact, not doing so is the trick. She lets others imagine, invent, obsess. Her allure lies in the withheld, not the given, which is ironic, because the entire palace is teeming with people desperate to give. A fringe fact that adds flavour to this: in 18th century Venice, elite courtesans were trained in diplomacy, language, and seduction from the age of 12. Some wielded more influence than ambassadors, earning political secrets between bedsheets and storing them like currency. There are actual Venetian court records that refer to such women as shadow diplomats. The Queen continues, now telling a story about a duchess from another kingdom, never named, who once demanded that a suitor duel 3 rivals before she agreed to meet him. Not marry, just meet. He won, of course, only to die of infection 2 weeks later. Tragic, the Queen says, sipping her tea, but flattering. There's a pause, and then quite suddenly, she turns her gaze to you. What would you say, she asks, voice low but ringing, is the most powerful form of desire? Oh, everyone turns to you, half in amusement, half in curiosity, as though you've been a book on a shelf this whole time, and someone's finally decided to open you. You feel the heat rise to your cheeks, This is a game. You're the new pawn, and there is no correct answer, but you have to play anyway. You swallow, think, then say, the kind that never needs to... Oh. The silence that follows is satisfying. You don't know where it came from, but it lands. The Queen smiles slowly, then turns her attention elsewhere, as though your answer has been catalogued and filed somewhere between useful and dangerous. An open scholarly debate still unfolding. Did monarchs like Elizabeth of Versailles, who famously never married, maintain their power precisely because they remained unattached? Some argue that her refusal to wed made her untouchable, a virgin queen wielding courtship itself like a whip. Others say she was just smart enough to turn her lack of options into mythology. Regardless, her flirtations with foreign suitors were often used to manipulate alliances, buy time, and shift the balance of power without ever removing a single glove. As court dismisses, you walk behind the others, absorbing everything. Desire is a weapon here, and every courtier sharpens theirs daily. You think of the Marchioness and her borrowed room, the bride and her bloodied sheets, the Queen and her figs stuffed with poetry. And what about you? Where do you fall in all this? You're still unknown, but now you're noticed, which is worse in some ways. Your name has entered the realm of speculative whispers. Someone will claim they saw you alone with the Queen. Someone else will swear you spoke too confidently for a mere observer. Your face will appear in the corner of the conversations like smoke. Back in your room, you find a parcel on your pillow, a carved wooden box. You don't open it immediately. You stare at it for a long time. When you finally lift the lid, there's no letter, just a piece of fig, dried and sweet, resting on embroidered silk. The box stays unopened on your desk for 3 days, not because you're scared exactly, but because you know the moment you acknowledge it, you're playing someone's game. And there's nothing more dangerous in the palace than playing without knowing the rules. Besides, there's always the chance the fig wasn't from the Queen. Could have been from the Marchioness, or the Duke, or one of the Queen's more chaotic ladies-in-waiting who enjoys flinging flirtation like darts just to see where they stick. But by day 3, the fruit begins to shrivel, and the scent of cloves lingers on your fingertips. You throw it into the fire. Let the silk burn with it. You're not taking the bait. Not yet. The problem is the palace notices restraint. The moment you choose not to participate, people assume you've got something even juicier going on in private. In this place, mystery is louder than scandal. So by the time you return to the Grand Gallery for court supper, everyone looks at you just a beat too long. No one says anything, but you feel the hum of rumour growing in the walls like damp. Tonight's dinner is smaller, more exclusive, and at the head of the table isn't the Queen, but a woman known only as Madame Belune, the King's official mistress. Yes, official. That's how the system works here. Being someone's side lover isn't a dirty secret. It's a job. Comes with a salary, housing, influence, and the kind of wardrobe that would make a duchess weep. Belune is no arm candy, she's policy and pearls. You sit 2 places down from her, close enough to see the scar near her collarbone, just visible beneath the diamonds. Rumour has it she got it in a duel. Others say she fell off a horse trying to escape a marriage proposal. Either way, she doesn't hide it. That's her style. Brutally glamorous. She raises a glass. To love, she says, which ruins us all and rewards a few. Everyone laughs like it's the cleverest thing they've heard all year. You take a sip of your wine and wonder which group you're about to join. One historical fact that makes her toast land with more weight. In the French court under Louis XV, Madame de Pompadour served as the King's official mistress for years. But when their physical relationship ended, she remained in court, advising him on political affairs, shaping art and literature, even choosing which battles to fund. Being in the royal bed didn't make her powerful, staying out of it, and still being indispensable did. Back at the table, Belune leans in your direction and speaks with a voice meant for several ears. You're the one the Queen's been watching. You freeze, but only slightly. It's not a question, it's an announcement. Don't worry, she adds with a smirk. She watches all of us eventually. That's how she decides who's worth testing. A few courtiers around you raise their brows. A knight tries and fails to stifle a grin. You're in the ring now. No more edge-of-the-wall gliding. People are placing bets, metaphorically and otherwise. You try to look unfazed, which works until the fish course arrives. Herring in mustard sauce, and the smell nearly makes you gag. Across from you, a young noblewoman notices your expression and leans in. "Did you know," she says too cheerfully, "that in Denmark the royal mistress was once in charge of choosing what the king ate for every meal? And one night, when he angered her, she had the kitchen serve nothing but boiled fish for a week. He nearly passed out from mercury poisoning." She giggles. You smile politely. "This court may be less deadly than some, but passive aggression here comes with caviar." A fringe fact you recall uncomfortably. In the Spanish Habsburg court, certain mistresses were given their own councils and could recommend ministers, which means at one point a woman chosen for her face was controlling matters of war and trade while still being banned from public processions. The contradiction was baked into the job. After supper, you're invited, pressured really, to join a group in Belloon's private salon. The room is intoxicating, draped in crushed velvet scented with bergamot and myrrh, the firelight soft and flattering. There are cushions and wine and someone playing a lute in the corner like this is all perfectly casual. It's not. Belloon settles into a chaise, legs curled like a cat, and the conversation turns inevitably to conquests, but not military ones. Personal. Someone boasts about bedding a diplomat's wife during a treaty negotiation. Another recounts a masked tryst during Lent. All of it said with performative detachment, as if hearts were never involved, only strategy. You're asked, of course. What about you? Any secret affairs? Hidden lovers in the laundry rooms? A whispered name passed beneath a napkin? You shake your head. "I prefer to keep secrets secret." A few people smirk. Belloon narrows her eyes as if calculating whether you're being coy or just boring. Then she laughs. "Good," she says. "Secrets are currency. Spend them too quickly and you end up like Lady Voss, divorced, disinherited and wearing last season's lace." Everyone cackles. Poor Lady Voss, wherever she is, has become a punchline. That's how fast the tide turns here. One misstep and you go from object of desire to object of mockery. The only way to survive is to be wanted just enough. Too much and you become a threat. Too little and you're irrelevant. An open scholarly debate that still keeps court historians up at night. Was the institution of the royal mistress meant to stabilise the crown or undermine it? Some argue it was a way to manage the king's needs without endangering official alliances. Others believe it fractured the court, turning loyalty into competition and fueling endless internal power struggles. Either way, it created a shadow court with its own rules, ambitions and hierarchy. The evening ends when Belloon stands and offers her hand to a young poet who looks both honoured and terrified. They disappear behind a curtain. No one pretends not to notice. Someone refills your glass, you slip out before anyone else leaves, finding the corridor blessedly empty. The air is cooler now, the scent of smoke and perfume left behind like a ghost. You wonder who Belloon was before all this, before the gowns and the status. Did she fall in love with the king? Or just with the crown? Back in your quarters, a letter waits on your pillow. No seal, just a single word written in sharp ink. Soon. You read it once, then again. Then you slide it under your mattress. You don't burn this one, you don't eat it. You just sleep with it beneath you like a warning or a promise. The palace changes after dark. By day it parades itself in silks and schedules, servants darting like clock hands, courtiers bending toward favour like sunflowers. But at night the rules soften. The velvet hangs heavier. The candles burn lower. Conversations drop their volume and gain teeth. You know this now, You've stopped sleeping much. Dreams in the palace are indulgences. The real stories happen between midnight and morning. Tonight you're following one of those stories because a footman, too young to know better, slipped a folded parchment into your palm during afternoon court and whispered, "West Wing," after third bell. No signature, just a slanted symbol you've seen once before, etched into the fire grate in Belloon's salon. You should ignore it. You don't. The West Wing is quieter, older. Parts of it haven't been renovated in centuries. You move past doorways half covered in dust cloths, chandeliers with half their crystals missing, paintings where the eyes no longer bother to follow you. Eventually you reach a small unmarked door. It's ajar. You slip in. What hits you first is the warmth. It's a room you weren't sure actually existed, sort of lounge tucked between servants' quarters and the old chapel, softly lit, its ceiling low enough to feel secret. But it's not empty. No, inside are 6 or 7 people, none in court dress, loose robes, some barefoot, wine in mismatched goblets, and lounging in the centre, like a cat who built this den with her bare hands, a woman named Ilia. You've heard of her, of course. Everyone has. Not a noble, not married. Not officially anything, but always present. Where power simmers, she appears. She has no title, no estate, but moves through the palace like someone born under a comet. Some say she once belonged to a duke who died mysteriously. Others say she's part of an underground ring of informants who use seduction as leverage. Whatever the truth, tonight she's here and she's looking directly at you. Well, well, she says, they've finally sent us fresh meat. You don't smile, you sit. No one explains Babchins anything. They just keep drinking. A man plays something slow and circular on a lute. Someone else reads poetry in a language you can't place. A couple lounges in the corner, kissing lazily like they've forgotten anyone else exists. And in the middle of it all, Ilya watches you like you're the most interesting part of the room. Eventually, she gestures for you to follow her into the adjoining chamber. It's smaller, darker, scattered with pillows and one enormous mirror that reflects you both in soft candlelight. You've seen the court, she says, pouring wine. Now see this. She explains without explaining. This is a different kind of court. Not sanctioned, but not quite forbidden. A place where desire isn't political, at least not directly. Here, lovers meet without titles. Assignations happen without consequences. Unless you speak of them elsewhere, it's an open secret. A brothel wrapped in philosophy. A salon of sin for those who know how to keep quiet. One historical fact that shimmers behind her words. In 18th century Russia, Catherine the Great's court included unofficial salons where courtiers met to exchange more than ideas. These spaces blurred lines between affection and espionage. In some cases, spies were placed inside to observe liaisons, not for scandal's sake, but to gather leverage for statecraft. You ask Ilya what happens if someone breaks the silence. Her mouth curves into a dangerous smile. They disappear, she says. Or worse, they become boring. You look around, no one here is boring. There's the prince you saw duelling last week, now curled at the feet of a man with a scar down his neck. There's Lady Sareth, the Garter recipient, holding hands with someone you know is married to a counsellor. None of them speak of titles here. Everyone is equal, at least until morning. A fringe fact that fits too well. In the Mughal Empire, certain palace quarters were known to house entertainment rooms, staffed with musicians, dancers and intellectuals. But behind closed doors, those rooms doubled as romantic rendezvous spots for elites. Some even had peepholes installed for surveillance, not by guards, but by rival wives. Back in Ilya's chamber, she touches your face, not flirtatiously, more like she's assessing you. You haven't been touched by anyone important yet, she says. That's good. It means you still belong to yourself. You ask if that's rare. She nods. Rare and temporary. You stay for a while, drinking quietly, letting the room fold around you. The danger isn't loud here. It's slow, cosy, seductive, not just in the physical sense, but in the promise of being part of something realer than the court's polished performances. You understand now why people risk it. Why Belun might send someone here. Why the Queen might pretend it doesn't exist. And yet, even in this hidden world, you notice the glances, the calculations. Ilya may claim this is a place without politics, but nothing in the palace is truly free. Everything costs. The only question is when the debt comes due. An open scholarly debate still unresolved. Were these hidden courtly gatherings, salons, lounges, chambers of private culture, truly about freedom and passion, or were they just another layer of social control? Some historians argue they were escape valves, spaces where tension could bleed out without disrupting the official narrative. Others think they were decoys, illusions of liberty that kept potential rebels distracted with sex and wine. You leave just before dawn, the last candle flickering as you close the door. The corridor outside is cold, silent. You step lightly, suddenly aware of how loud your heart feels in your chest. You've crossed a line, not in action, but in knowledge. You've seen something you're not meant to speak of. Back in your chamber, another note waits. This time it's not a message, it's a drawing. A fig again, but sliced open. And inside, not seeds, but a single eye, inked in deep violet. You stare at it until the candle dies. By now, you've developed a sense for it, that subtle hum beneath the palace's pristine surface. It's like a second pulse, not the grand rhythm of statecraft and ceremony, but something slower, more dangerous. Desire as architecture, seduction as design. This place wasn't built for efficiency or comfort, it was built to be watched in, to be overheard in, and tonight you're going to the epicenter of that particular brand of spectacle, the infamous bedchambers of Versailles. You don't get there by carriage or invitation. No, this time you're simply transported. You close your eyes somewhere between one palace and another, and when they reopen, you're in a hall of mirrors, literally. Gilded frames, candlelight bouncing across endless reflections, and floors polished to a gloss so high you can see up your own nose if you're not careful. Welcome to France, darling. It's the 17th century, and King Louis XIV has decided to stage his lust as publicly as his war victories. Versailles isn't just a palace, it's a theatre. The Sun King didn't simply centralise his court here, he turned it into a carefully choreographed reality show. One where power wasn't kept behind closed doors, it was the door. The placement of a bedroom, the thickness of a curtain, the exact distance from the king's chambers to yours, it all meant something. So yes, the bedrooms were beautiful, but they weren't designed for sleep. You're guided through a suite of rooms by a silent valet in white gloves. You pass one chamber with a 4-poster bed carved with golden cherubs, but it's not used. The real bed, where Louis received mistresses and occasionally dignitaries, is in a smaller room hidden behind a false wall. Because even in a palace that celebrates performance, real indulgence still needs a decoy. He had mistresses, of course, many. Most famously, Madame de Montespan, who was more than just a lover. She was a political force, a trendsetter, a mother to several of his illegitimate children, and, some whispered, a dabbler in dark arts. Her rooms were lavish and strategically placed so that she could, at any moment, slip into the king's private quarters. But privacy was relative. A historical fact to curl your toes. At Versailles, the king's rising and dressing each morning, the lever, was a public ritual. Courtiers were invited to attend, observe, and participate in various stages of him being robed, groomed, and prepared for the day, and this ceremony extended to the bedroom, blurring the line between the royal body and the state itself. That's not metaphor, that's monarchy. But even beyond the formal spectacle, the very layout of the palace told a story. Corridors that looked like dead ends often turned, at odd angles, into side passages that reconnected behind salons or private galleries. Some doors opened into full apartments, others led to tight staircases that vanished into the floor. The effect was disorienting, deliberately so. You're led through one such passage now, ducking slightly to avoid a low beam. The air is cooler here, and you notice the scent of something faintly metallic, old perfume, mixed with the damp stone. You find yourself in a narrow space with small slitted windows, just wide enough to view the chamber beyond. And there it is, the king's true bedroom. There's someone inside. A man reclines on the bed, robe half open, speaking softly to a woman seated near the foot. You can't hear everything, but their body language is intimate in that slow, tired way of people who no longer need to impress each other. There's a plate of fruit on the table, a discarded shoe, a sword propped casually against the bed frame. And then something shifts. The woman turns her head slightly, and you recognise her. Madame de Maintenon, former governess to the king's children, deeply religious, widely rumoured to have become his secret wife after Montespan fell from favour. Unlike Montespan, Maintenon avoided the public stage. She stayed behind curtains. She advised, she prayed. And yet, here she is, barefoot on the king's bed, smiling at something he's just whispered. The fringe fact you remember now sends a chill down your spine. Versailles was equipped with hidden observation rooms, not just for security, but for surveillance. Servants, advisors, and yes, sometimes even rivals could spy through tiny peepholes or listening tubes built into the walls. Think of it as a very fancy candlelit version of CCTV. The court was a stage, and the audience never left their seats. You shift your weight and the floor creaks, just slightly, enough. The man on the bed glances toward the wall. You freeze. He squints. He can't see you, but he knows. And that's the thing, isn't it? They always know. At Versailles, you're never alone. That's the point. You're ushered away quickly, deeper into the palace, past rooms with false bookshelves, alcoves with curtained beds, drawing rooms where tapestries rustle just a little too much when no one's near them. The entire structure is a maze of secrets with a peacock painted on top, gorgeous, hypnotising, and absolutely terrifying. An open scholarly debate that still swirls among historians. Was Versailles a genuine instrument of centralised power or just a distraction? Some say Louis XIV created a pressure cooker environment, keeping nobles so wrapped up in pageantry and proximity that they couldn't plot rebellion. Others argue that he built a house of mirrors, reflecting his own insecurities and need for control back at his courtiers, trapping everyone, including himself, in a performance that could never end. Your final stop for the evening is the Hall of Mirrors again. Empty now, silent. You walk its length slowly, your reflection trailing beside you in 100 flickers. You imagine what's been seen in these mirrors. Glances across masked balls, stolen kisses during candlelit walks, the triumphant smirk of a courtesan who's just replaced her rival in the king's affections. And you wonder, in a place like this, where even the walls have eyes, is it ever possible to love freely? Or does love, like everything else here, get dressed up in satin, powdered down and choreographed into something useful? Back in your borrowed quarters, a parcel waits. This time it's not a fig, it's a delicate gold key with a small tag attached. Next time don't watch, join. You sit on the edge of the bed, key in hand, and listen to the faint sounds of laughter echoing through the palace walls. Not near, not far, just enough to remind you you're inside the machine now, and it wants more of you. You think you've seen it all, ritualised bedding ceremonies, clandestine corridors, candlelit voyeurism in mirrored halls, but nothing prepares you for the barely controlled chaos that is Tudor England. One minute you're in Versailles, and the next, you're ducking under low timber beams in a palace that smells like boiled meat, wet wool and ambition. The tapestries here are coarser, the laughter louder, and the danger personal. Because this isn't just any royal court. This is the hormonal hurricane of Henry VIII, and you've just stepped directly into the eye of it. You land somewhere between the privy chamber and the Great Hall, and already the gossip is flying thicker than the smoke from the hearth. Names you've only ever heard whispered now tumble from every passing mouth. Anne, Jane, Catherine, so many Catherines, and Thomas, which is apparently the Tudor version of Guy, who is definitely sleeping with someone's wife. Here, sex isn't ceremonial or cloaked in poetic allegory. It's blunt, public, and sometimes fatal. You overhear a lady-in-waiting whispering about a court musician who was too good with his fingers, and now no one can find him. Another insists that Queen Catherine Howard was caught with her skirts up and her mouth shut, until the axe fell. The court's energy is frantic, like everyone knows the floor might collapse beneath them at any moment. And you? You're already slipping? Because Henry has noticed you. Yes, that Henry. He's bigger than you expected, physically and otherwise. There's something about him that seems too large for the room he's in. His presence stretches the walls. He wears red velvet like a threat and smiles with the full confidence of a man who believes God personally signs off on his affairs. He glances once in your direction and you're immediately, unfortunately, visible. One historical fact that bears repeating. Henry VIII didn't just marry 6 times. He redefined what royal sex could do. It wasn't just pleasure, it was national policy. A queen's fertility could decide the future of the kingdom, and her inability to produce a son was treated less like misfortune and more like betrayal. That's how you end up with a chopped off head and a replacement bride before the blood dries. You're introduced by a courtier whose name you immediately forget, probably because you're too focused on not fainting. The king is surprisingly gentle in his manner, at first. He asks where you're from, whether you sing, whether you enjoy riding. Then he says, far too casually, "The queen grows dull in winter. I trust you do not." You don't answer. He doesn't expect you to. Later in your borrowed chamber, a gift arrives, not jewellery, not flowers. A roast goose, perfectly seasoned, still warm. With it a note. "Let us not go hungry." You're not sure if it's innuendo or a veiled threat. Possibly both. At dinner that evening, the room practically vibrates with tension. Queen Catherine is seated to the king's right, barely 20, laughing too loudly, her fingers twisting a napkin until it tears. You can feel the watching. Courtiers keeping count of every glance, every word, every too long pause. It's not just that the king is interested in you, it's that everyone knows he is. A fringe fact that throws everything into even sharper relief. During Henry's reign, women accused of infidelity with the king or of being too familiar could be investigated by Parliament, even without proof. One servant girl was interrogated for a kiss that may have never happened. Another executed on the testimony of jealous rivals. It wasn't about what you did, it was about who said you did it. The tension isn't just romantic, it's survivalist. Even the mistresses aren't safe. Take Anne Boleyn, for example. She didn't just seduce Henry, she played him. With poetry, with wit, with calculated refusals, she made herself indispensable. Until she wasn't. You pass her old apartments on a walk and feel the chill of it, as if her laughter still echoes down the hall right before the blade fell. An open, scholarly debate that still divides Tudor historians. Was Anne truly guilty of adultery, or was it all a setup? A convenient excuse to remove a queen who had lost her political value? Some argue that the charges were laughably thin, supported by coerced confessions and outright fabrications. Others believe Anne was a political animal, and her flirtations were real enough to worry the king's already twitchy paranoia. Back at court, the king continues his quiet campaign of attention. A glance here, a question there, you never see him twice in the same robe. He wears power like a second skin, and everyone else is simply orbiting, hoping to be kissed by the sun or at least not burned to death. One night you find yourself in the chapel, alone, or so you think. A voice behind you says, "Pray he doesn't pick you." You turn. It's a lady in waiting with tired eyes and a scar on her hand that she doesn't hide. You think it's flattery, she whispers, but it's a curse. He never just wants you, he claims you, and once you're his, you stop being yours. She vanishes before you can answer. You try to remain invisible after that. You slip through side halls, decline invitations, you wear drab colours, but it's no use. One morning a page arrives with a summons. You're expected in the king's private apartments. You go. What choice do you have? The rooms are oppressively warm, fires crackling, rugs too thick to be comfortable. The king lounges with a hunting falcon on his glove, like that's a normal thing to have indoors. He gestures for you to sit. You do. He speaks of falconry, of poetry, of war. Then casually, "Do you believe a man can be punished for love?" You say nothing. He seems to like that. He stands, walks behind you, lifts a locket of your hair, lets it fall, then without turning back says, "I don't expect you tonight, but I will." And then he's gone. You sit there, heart pounding like a battle drum, and when you return to your chamber, another gift waits. This time, not food, not gold. A white rose, perfectly preserved, plucked from a bush that only grows near the scaffold. You hold the white rose like it might explode. It doesn't. It just sits in your palm, soft as sorrow, smelling faintly of snow and soap. Someone went to great trouble to keep it fresh. Cut recently, preserved quickly, its stem wrapped in fine gauze and silver wire. It's not just a token, it's a warning dressed like a gift. The kind of gesture that says, "I want you," and then whispers, "And I can end you too." You don't sleep, not really. You lie very still, staring at the ceiling of your chamber as if it might offer advice. But the carvings just blink back at you, unmoved. Tudor ceilings are like that, ornate, indifferent, thick with symbolism that no one bothers to explain. Birds with bleeding eyes, roses bound in knots. Everywhere the suggestion that beauty and danger were meant to share the same bed. You consider leaving, just walking out through the kitchens, through the stables, through the mire, disappearing before things get worse. But you know that's not how this place works. You don't leave royal orbit without permission. You don't outrun the king's gaze, especially not when he's set it on you like a falcon on a mouse. So you stay. And in the staying, you become part of the story. Because just when you think your pulse can't take another twist, you stumble into something worse, something quieter, something tender. You're walking the gallery at dusk, trying to blend into the gloom when you hear it. Low voices behind a curtain. Not moaning, not plotting, just whispering. You pause. You know better, but you pause. And then, very slowly, you ease the curtain aside. Inside is a young man you recognise, the son of a minor earl, barely 20. And next to him, curled close enough to kiss, is someone who should absolutely not be there. A prince, not just any prince, the king's nephew, an heir or something close to it. They don't see you, or maybe they do and just don't care, because the way they're looking at each other, the way they're barely touching hands, it's not lust, it's not calculation, it's love. raw and reckless. You don't move. You can't. It's like watching a candle burn down to nothing. They're whispering dreams into the space between them. Fragile things that sound like escape plans. France, the sea, a tiny villa with no courtiers, no politics, just air and time. It's fantasy, obviously. This isn't that kind of world. But for a second you believe it too. Then one of them says your name. Not loud, not accusing, just acknowledging. You step into the room and the curtain falls behind you. They don't panic, they don't pull apart, they just look at you, like people who know they've already lost everything except the truth between them. And then the prince, his voice careful, dignified, tired, says, "We need someone we can trust." You stare at him, then at the boy beside him. You've seen what happens to people caught breaking rules that aren't supposed to exist. This isn't just scandal, this is treason dressed as tenderness. A historical fact that makes your chest feel hollow. Edward II of England, nearly 3 centuries before this moment, was widely believed to have had romantic and possibly sexual relationships with men, most notably Piers Gaveston. Their closeness caused such outrage among nobles that Gaveston was eventually exiled and later murdered. Edward, meanwhile, was deposed, imprisoned, and, allegedly, killed in a manner too grotesque to repeat aloud. Whether the rumours were true or politically convenient doesn't matter. What matters is that perception was enough to destroy them. The prince tells you their plan, simple and insane. They'll flee after the harvest festival, dress as monks, cross the channel. They've already bribed a guard. They just need someone to pass letters, no names, no wax seals, just hands and eyes and silence. You agree before you can stop yourself, not because you're noble, not because you believe in true love, but because for once no one is using you to climb a ladder or claim a bed. These two don't want your body, they want your discretion. And in a palace where everyone is screaming for attention, that makes you feel like a cell. A fringe fact you recall may be too late. During the reign of James III of England, affectionate letters between the king and his male favourites were so intimate that modern scholars still debate their meaning. Some claim they were romantic, others simply poetic. But the line between friendship and forbidden desire has always been dangerously thin in royal courts, and always weaponised. You begin delivering letters that week, slips of folded parchment hidden in recipe books, beneath silver trays sewn into sleeves. You learn to spot the signs, who's watching, who's listening, who thinks they're clever. You grow careful, fast, and you learn something else. You're not the only one passing secrets. One day you intercept a note meant for someone else, dropped, not meant for you, sealed in a rush. You hesitate, then you open it. Inside, a message written in blocky, angry Latin, a name, a time, and the phrase, "caught in the act, witnesses secured." You drop the letter, your hands are shaking, they have been found out. An open scholarly debate still unresolved. How many royal scandals were manufactured to punish political disobedience rather than sexual indiscretion? Some historians believe accusations of immorality were simply the easiest way to discredit someone too popular or too independent. It's not about sin, it's about arrogance. That night, you find the prince. You deliver the message without a word. His expression doesn't change, but the light in his eyes dies a little. "We were careful," he says to no one. "We were so careful." He disappears 3 days later. So does the boy. The official story is that the prince has gone to lead a military campaign. The earl's son is sent home in disgrace. Neither returns. You hear whispers. A shipwreck. A fever. A duel gone wrong. You don't ask. You don't want the truth. The truth is never kind. In your chamber, the rose has wilted. You leave it there. You don't want another one. But what you do find on your windowsill beneath a feather tied with string is a tiny note. Unmarked. No signature. Just a single line written in the prince's hand. "Thank you for seeing us." You weep. Quietly. Like it's something dangerous. Because in this place it is. There's a strange kind of stillness that settles over the palace after a scandal. Not calm, not peace, just a thick, uneasy quiet. Like the air has forgotten how to move. People speak more softly. Eyes linger too long. Doors open a fraction slower. It's the sound of everyone pretending not to know what everyone knows. And in this particular case, everyone knows. The prince is gone. The boy is gone. The hallways feel emptier, even though the palace is still stuffed with lace and ambition. But now the danger is subtler, slinking through the corridors like smoke. No execution, no trial, no public spectacle, just removal. That's the clever part. If you erase someone silently, people start to wonder if they were ever real. And maybe that's the point. Let the body vanish and let the fear stay. But there's still a job to be done, still a throne to protect, and in royal courts nothing brings people back to their senses faster than a pregnancy. Because now the Queen has missed her courses, and that, more than romance, more than rumours, more than anything, is the true axis around which this entire palace turns. You learn quickly that when a royal woman might be pregnant, she stops being a person. She becomes a vessel, a walking hope, or, depending on how things go, a political catastrophe on legs. You're summoned to her apartments not as a guest, but as another pair of trained eyes. Someone who's proven useful. Someone who knows when to look and when to pretend not to. The Queen lies on a chaise, pale, swollen around the eyes, hand resting lightly on her belly, as though afraid to touch it too firmly. Around her bustle midwives, herbalists, and ladies-in-waiting who shift between reverent and terrified with every new symptom. The air smells of rosewater and something more sour beneath it. Fear, maybe. Or the stale scent of expectation. You watch as her pulse is taken, as her skin is examined, as her urine is studied in a glass vial, like it holds the answer to the future. No one says what they're all thinking, please let it be a boy. A historical fact that drives the point home. In the 1500s, Mary Tudor believed herself pregnant not once but twice, each time followed by months of public celebration, gifts and planning, and each time ending in disappointment. Modern historians suspect they were false pregnancies, likely caused by a mix of stress, illness, and the sheer pressure of royal expectation. But at the time, the implications were devastating. Every unfulfilled promise of an heir became a threat to the very stability of the crown, and so the Queen is watched. Constantly. She's not allowed to leave her apartments. Her meals are recorded, her stools measured, her moods analysed with a devotion usually reserved for prophets. Everyone waits to see if she blooms or bleeds. You're given a journal, a small leather-bound book where you're to record every detail, not just physical signs, but what she says, what she dreams. One entry reads, "Woke in tears, claimed she saw the child's face, said it had hair like the king's, but smiled like the old prince." You cross that last line out, not because it's untrue, but because it's too close to remembering. A fringe fact that seems less fringe now. In certain early modern courts, it was believed that a woman's dreams during pregnancy could influence the nature of the child. Dream of lions, and you'd birth a warrior. Dream of snow, and you'd raise someone cold-hearted. This led to some queens being force-fed stories of brave kings and noble saints while they slept, just in case. The Queen is gentle with you, softer than you expected. Once, when the room is empty, she takes your hand and asks, "Do you think he'll love it? If it's a girl?" You don't answer, she doesn't press. The truth is, no one loves a royal daughter until she becomes useful. Marry her off, use her as a bargaining chip, mould her into a symbol of piety or grace. But at birth she's a sigh, an apology, a problem to be solved later. An open scholarly debate that still divides historians. Was the obsession with male heirs purely about inheritance laws and military strength? Or was it rooted deeper in misogyny and religious symbolism? Some argue that practical concerns about property and lineage were the driving force. Others insist that it was ideology, deep-seated beliefs about women being weaker, less capable of ruling, and more prone to emotional instability that fed the desperate need for sons. Weeks pass, her belly grows, or seems to. No one says the word false, not out loud, but the glances sharpen. The midwives shift from hopeful to wary. Rumours leak, someone overheard her crying in the night. Someone says the blood returned. Someone swears she's still untouched by the king, and this is all a performance. You watch her closely. She sleeps with one hand on her stomach and mutters the same phrase over and over. "It must be a boy. It must be a boy. It must be..." You write it down. You don't know who you're writing for anymore. One morning the bleeding starts. Not much, but enough. Enough to start the whispering again. The midwives become frantic, the prayers begin. Her appetite vanishes. Her dreams go dark. The king visits that night. He doesn't touch her. Doesn't speak. Just stands by the window staring into the garden for a full 10 minutes before leaving. You're in the corner, pretending to embroider. You catch the way her face crumples the moment he's gone. You want to look away. You don't. The next day, the doctors claim it was a correction. Nothing to worry about. A momentary lapse. You write it down, but the words feel like lies. Then, just as the anxiety begins to settle again, a new decree arrives. You are no longer permitted in the Queen's chambers. No explanation. No thank you. Just gone. Reassigned. Back in your own quarters, you find another letter. This one sealed. No signature. Just a wax imprint shaped like a rose. Not the white one. A red one. Inside, 3 words. She is not alone. You clutch the letter to your chest. Not because it brings relief, but because it means the game is shifting again. And whatever is growing inside that queen, whether child or rumour or something darker, you know now that birth is only the beginning. You thought you were done with the queen. You thought being dismissed from her chamber meant your part was over, that you'd been peeled off like an old label and thrown somewhere out of reach. But in the palace, nobody ever truly leaves the story. They just slip into new corridors. And some corridors, you learn, smell more strongly than others. Your new assignment takes you underground, beneath the palace kitchens, past the wine cellars, into what the courtiers politely call the lower levels and what everyone else calls the stink. It's a labyrinth of stone passages, mouldy tapestries and rooms that haven't seen daylight since someone accidentally became heir by surviving a fever. You're not being punished, or maybe you are. Either way, you've been told to investigate concerns of sanitation and conduct. What they mean is, something smells wrong, and someone's probably doing something they shouldn't be. You follow the scent. It's not foul exactly, not like rot, but it's rich, musky, like a mix of candle wax, sweat, and overly sweet perfume layered too many times. It clings to the walls. It's in the fabric of the furniture. You find yourself gagging more than once, not because it's disgusting, but because it's intimate. Too intimate. Like walking into the leftover heat of someone else's private moment. And then you find the room. You push open a warped wooden door and blink into a space that feels stolen from another world. Velvet drapes, faint harp music from somewhere behind the wall, a basin of warm water that's still steaming. And in the corner a faint outline of a bath, not the elegant kind, but a giant wooden tub contraption, lined with linen, recently used. The smell makes more sense now. This isn't a storage room. It's a hidden boudoir, and apparently someone's been using it. You find evidence everywhere. A mirror propped up with lipstick smudges on the edge. A cup of half-melted honey. A comb with strands of auburn hair caught in the teeth. A velvet shoe tucked beneath a curtain. Whoever's been coming here isn't just sneaking around. They're staging something. Rehearsing a version of themselves for an audience that might never arrive. A historical fact you didn't think would be relevant today. In the Middle Ages, and well into the Renaissance, royalty and nobles rarely bathed in the way we think of it. Water, especially warm water, was considered risky, something that could open the pores to disease. Instead, they relied on dry perfumes, oils, and heavy powders. A full-body bath was rare, private, and often reserved for seduction. If someone was bathing, they were either sick or about to get very lucky. You lift a curtain and find a tray of toiletries, rose oil, lavender water, a wax seal with no family crest, anonymous, which is harder to trace than a name. There are also a few curious bottles. Thick glass, some half empty, one sealed with wax and marked with a simple X. You uncap it, sniff carefully, and instantly recoil. Musk, concentrated, maybe animal-derived, the kind of scent that lingers long after the lights go out. A fringe fact you once heard from a washed-up court poet over too much wine. Some royal mistresses in 17th century Italy used ambergris and civet musk as body perfume. Materials secreted from whales and wildcats, respectively. The idea wasn't to smell clean, it was to smell expensive and alive. Desire, it seems, has never been subtle. You spend hours cataloguing what you find, every pot, every lace-trimmed cloth, every clue. You don't know whose secret lair this is yet. Could be a courtesan, could be a noblewoman playing a dangerous game, could be the Queen herself crafting up a new persona for when the current one collapses. What you do know is that someone is bathing in secret, and that's not about hygiene, it's about control. You find yourself returning to the room the next night, not because you're told to, because you want to know what changes, and it does change. The basin's empty now, the mirror wiped clean, but new items have arrived. A bottle of crushed iris scent, a sheer silk chemise draped over the tub, and, curiously, a book. Open to the middle, a handwritten diary, pages water-stained but legible. You scan a few lines. It's in French. Loose translations come quickly. He kissed me like I was something holy. I laughed because I am not. My skin still smells of cloves. He prefers nutmeg, but I do not change for him anymore. You flip ahead. The Queen will never know what I took from her. You stop reading, you put the book down, carefully, as if it might bite you. An open scholarly debate that suddenly feels very personal. To what extent did hygiene and scent serve as tools of seduction in royal courts? Some scholars argue that bathing was a form of self-discipline, a preparation ritual that turned the body into a gift. Others believe it was less about cleanliness and more about sensory manipulation, a way to cloud judgment with fragrance and heat, to tilt power dynamics before a single word was spoken. You're deep in thought when you hear the faintest sound behind the curtain, a breath, a shift of cloth. You freeze, but no one appears. You wait, long enough to know it's not your imagination, long enough to realise you're not alone. Whoever it is, they're letting you stay. They want you to see this place. They want you curious. That's more dangerous than any direct warning. You leave in silence. Back in your room, your clothes smell of musk and steam. You undress and toss them into the corner, but the scent clings to your skin. You scrub, but it lingers. Whoever set up that chamber left more than perfume. They left a message. I control what you smell. I control what you remember. The next morning a gift arrives. Not from the Queen, not from the King, just a small box. Inside a linen cloth. Damp, still warm. Folded around a note that reads, I prefer cloves. No signature, no crest, just scent. There are things you can scrub off. Mud, wine, guilt, if you really try. But scent? No. Scent stays. It curls into your clothes, creeps into your pillows, settles in the threads of your memory until it becomes indistinguishable from the feeling itself. And now you smell like someone else's desire. The cloth still sits folded in the little box. Clove, sharp, sweet, sticky. Not a common scent in the palace. Too bold, too unladylike. You ask no one, but you wonder. Who prefers cloves? Who sends a warm cloth like a love letter? It's not the Queen. She doesn't scent her linens with anything. The King has the nose of a warhorse and wouldn't know a clove from a clod. Belloon? Maybe. But this is too subtle for her. She's more ruby garters and laughter that echoes long after she leaves a room. And then one evening you find yourself summoned to the gallery. Not the grand one, but a smaller room near the north wing, full of forgotten portraits and a draft that smells of beeswax and old books. The note said only, wear black. Arrive alone. Leave your name behind. You obey, of course. You wear a simple black gown. No embroidery, no jewellery. You tie your hair back in a knot so tight it hurts. You tell no one where you're going. You slip through the corridor like smoke. Inside the room, the candles burn low and the furniture has been rearranged. Chairs in a circle, velvet draped over the mirrors, a man playing a strange, lilting tune on a viola. You count 12 people, faces half hidden by masks. Not a costume party. This isn't that kind of gathering. These masks are symbolic. Leather, lace, bone. Each person wearing their secrets like armour. A woman approaches you. Her mask is made of black feathers, delicate and absurdly tall. You recognise her by her voice, even though you've never heard her say your name. Welcome, she says, to the mask within the mask. This is it. The court's worst-kept secret. The circle. A place where rank, gender and decorum are temporarily suspended. Where desire is not only allowed, but examined, performed, studied. It's not an orgy, not exactly. It's more of a salon of temptation. You're here to observe, or participate, or both. You take your seat. A man speaks. His voice is honeyed but uncertain. I wanted him to kiss me first, he says, but he bowed instead, so I kissed his hand. A few in the circle chuckle softly, not unkindly. Another voice, a woman this time, or maybe not. Her tone is low, even. I kissed her because she looked like my sister. Not was, just looked. No one laughs, just nods. A young courtier removes their mask and says, I married a woman and dreamed of a man the entire time. His face was never clear, but I always woke up happy. Each person takes a turn, confessions, performances, memory theatre. You're not sure, but none of this would ever be spoken in daylight. These are not things the court allows, not on paper. And yet here it is, the tangle of truth and longing that runs under every corridor like an underground river. A historical fact floats into your mind uninvited. King James I of England was known for his intimate relationships with several male courtiers, most notably George Villiers, the Duke of Buckingham. Their letters to one another were emotional, poetic, and, at times, erotic, though historians still argue whether their love was ever consummated. Regardless, it caused uproar. The court whispered, the church seethed, and James, unbothered, wrote, "I am the husband, and he is my wife." Back in the circle, someone begins reading a poem. You recognise the voice, someone from the outer court, a tailor's son elevated for reasons no one dares speak aloud. The poem is simple, just 4 lines, but it wraps around the room like silk. He pressed his thumb against my spine and I forgot my family's name. I woke in linen not my own, and still, I do it all again. You're so distracted by the hush it leaves behind that you almost miss the next moment, when the woman in feathers turns to you. "Speak," she says, not cruelly, not even with command, just invitation. You pause, then slowly you rise. "I saw 2 people love each other," you begin. Your voice sounds smaller than usual. "But they couldn't be seen, not really, not fully, so they loved in stolen corners, and now they're gone." The room is still. One of the masked figures bows their head. You sit down again, heart pounding. The woman in feathers reaches over and gently takes your hand. Her gloves are warm, scented faintly of clove. A fringe fact you once read in a discarded book. In 18th century Persia, there were poetry houses where same-sex couples could meet under the guise of artistic exchange. If anyone was accused, they'd recite a verse and claim it was about metaphor. The trick was in the language. Everyone pretended not to understand. Everyone understood. Later, the circle ends without ceremony. No applause, no kisses, just masks removed and soft goodnights. You make your way to the door, but the woman in feathers stops you. "We meet on full moons," she says. "You'll know when. But remember, what is spoken here belongs to the fire." You nod. Outside, the air is damp. A low fog has crept over the palace grounds. You walk alone back to your quarters, your black dress heavy with candle smoke and stories you cannot tell. On your pillow, another note waits. This time, written in an unfamiliar hand. Some truths are safer in the dark, no signature, no scent. But beside it, resting like punctuation, is a single black feather. There are stories that get written down, and then there are the ones that haunt the margins. You've spent enough time in this palace to know the difference. The official tales wear coats of arms and careful punctuation. They're bound in leather, preserved by secretaries with excellent posture and terrible imagination. But the real stories, the ones with skin and teeth, are smuggled in letters, folded into hems, buried in drawers that only get opened when someone dies unexpectedly and their belongings are sorted by someone nosy. That's what brings you to the archive tonight. Not the big, chilly room filled with ledgers and inventories. No, that's for boring things like tax records and wine shipments. You're in the unofficial archive, a narrow wood-panelled chamber tucked behind the map room, where discarded correspondence ends up when no one knows what to do with it, or when it's too dangerous to destroy but too embarrassing to cite. You're here because of a letter, or rather several. It began with one, slipped under your door unsigned, a piece of yellowed parchment folded and refolded so many times it felt soft in your hands. The ink was smudged, but the words clear. He begged me not to speak of it, so I wrote it instead. No date, no name, just that. And at the bottom, a symbol, 2 arrows crossing through a crown. You'd seen that mark once before, carved into a chair leg in Bellun's salon. It means something. You're sure of it. You spend hours in the archive, pulling boxes that haven't been opened in decades. They're stuffed with bits of palace detritus, torn music scores, unfinished love notes, pressed flowers, and confessions disguised as recipes. Some are written in code, some in a lover's shorthand you can't crack. But then you find it, a bundle of letters tied in faded blue ribbon. You untie them with a care that borders on reverence. The first is written in looping elegant script. Last night you compared my breath to storm clouds. I still don't know if it was a compliment. I still dream of it like one. The second. I wore your ring beneath my glove. The steel burned my skin, but I felt like you were there. Do you still wear the one I gave you? Or have you traded it for something with a crest? The third. She kissed me once, just to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I still don't. but I can't look her in the eye anymore and she knows it. You keep reading. They're written by someone from the inner court, a man, you think, though the language is slippery, deliberately genderless. Some letters are signed, yours always, others not at all, and all of them are addressed to no one, or everyone. But the content is unmistakable. These are love letters, intimate, desperate, and in a few cases explicit enough to make you sit back and reread just to be sure. One historical fact jumps to mind like a warning. In 18th century France, dozens of private letters were seized during an investigation into a nobleman suspected of sedition. What they found instead was a cache of love notes between him and a fellow officer, notes filled with longing, apologies, and in one case an anatomical drawing so detailed it was considered pornographic. The nobleman was not executed for treason. He was quietly exiled for moral indecency. His name was struck from the family tree. Back in the archive you find one letter that makes your blood slow. If I die before you, burn these. If you die first, I'll carry them with me into the fire. Either way, they end in flame. You stop. You reread. And then you realise the handwriting isn't just familiar. It's the same as the letter that started this, the smuggled note, the one slipped under your door. Whoever wrote these is still alive. That's impossible. Some of these letters are decades old. They reference events that happened before your time, but the ink on the new one was fresh. You felt it, which means someone has kept this story alive, not just as memory, but as hope or warning. A fringe fact you once dismissed now feels sharp-edged and true. In the Ottoman Empire, eunuchs who served in the harim often acted as secret couriers for love letters between concubines and princes. Some were caught and executed. Others became so skilled at the trade that their services were requested by powerful women across rival dynasties. A few even kept copies of the most beautiful letters, hiding them in old Quran bindings and walls. Some have still never been found. You start to notice the pattern. The letters follow a rhythm: pleasure, absence, regret, longing, silence. Over and over, like a relationship lived entirely in shadows. You find one written in charcoal pencil, shaky and rushed. You touched my hand during the winter procession. I thought you'd forgotten how. I think I stopped breathing until you laughed again. Another. They say I'm married now. I can't tell if it's true. I recite vows with my mouth and write your name with my fingers. That's the kind of husband I am. These are not generic. These are specific, real. You start thinking about the people in your orbit. Who might have loved this way? Who might still be waiting? Who has eyes that linger too long on people they cannot have? An open, scholarly debate haunts your thoughts as you stack the letters into a box. Were royal palaces ever safe for real love? Or was everything so tangled in power and property that intimacy had to be smuggled like contraband? Some historians argue that forbidden love flourished precisely because it had no official outlet. Others say love was impossible, that everything, even affection, was negotiation. You don't know who's right. You only know that these letters feel more human than anything you've read in the royal library. You return the bundle to its box and tuck it back into the shadows, but you keep the newest note, the one that found you. Fold it, pocket it, carry it like an ember. Back in your room you find your own parchment, blank, clean, crisp. You don't know who you're writing to, or why. But still, your hand moves. I don't know your name. I don't know if you still love them, but your words mattered. They still do. I've seen them. I've heard you. You sign nothing. You fold the letter once, twice, 3 times. And then you leave it in the archive inside the book with the false spine, where you know it will be found. Because some love letters were never meant to reach the person they're addressed to. They're meant to reach someone. You're awakened by music. Not the polite pastel sort that drifts through ballroom doors or leaks from drawing rooms where amateurs pluck harpsichords in hopes of catching a duke's ear. No. This music is different, lower, rhythmic, heavy with strings and something deeper, like drums you can't quite hear but feel in your chest. It thrums through the walls, through the stone floor, vibrating up into your bones like a sand heartbeat. You sit up, eyes still adjusting, and realise someone has left a robe at the foot of your bed. Not yours, finer, lighter, scented with cinnamon. There's a note pinned to it. Wear this, say nothing. Tonight, you are nobody. You already know where you're going. You've heard whispers about it for weeks, the hidden wing, the lacquered screens. The shadows where silk and obedience blend into something older, something sharper. The Ottoman harem. You wrap the robe around your body, careful not to think too much. It fits perfectly. Of course it does. Whoever left it knew your size, your scent, your silence. You move through the corridors like a breath, escorted not by guards but by two women in crimson veils who say nothing and never touch you. They just move and you follow, past thick velvet curtainin and doorways that shimmer with gold leaf and old secrets. And then, just like that, you're there. Not in some gaudy pleasure dome, like the court gossips describe. No fountains of wine, no reclining women in feathers feeding each other sugared grapes. The harem is nothing like that. It's quieter, stranger. A place of power so condensed it hums. A maze of rooms and courtyards and silk cushions and polished wood floors that reflect candlelight like water. Here, women rule, not officially, not publicly, but clearly. You're led into a small chamber with lattice windows and low tables. There are maybe 10 other people there. Some women, some not. All veiled, all watching. A woman in a deep green robe gestures for you to sit. Her face is bare. Her eyes are lined with kohl. She speaks not in Turkish, but in a slow, lilting French. You have been chosen to witness, she says, to listen, to forget. And then the ceremony begins. No one dances. Instead, they speak. Stories, memories, desires, some too old to be relevant, some so fresh they still sting. One woman speaks of her first night in the palace when she was 12. Given a robe, a bath, and a name that wasn't hers. She describes how she learned to smile without showing teeth, to listen with her shoulders, to seduce without promise. Another tells of a prince she bedded for 3 months before learning his name. Another tells of a eunuch who taught her to read, then vanished one morning without a goodbye. You're told this is the Parfum Court, an inner circle within the harem, so secret it doesn't officially exist. Their role is subtle but vital. Pleasure, yes, but also observation. These women, and a few favoured men, are trained to read desire like a script. They learn what the Sultan wants before he does. They listen to pillow talk, translate sighs into strategy, occasionally deliver messages between lovers who should never meet in daylight. One historical fact crashes through your thoughts like a gong. In the Ottoman Empire, the harem was not merely a pleasure den, it was a school. Women were trained in politics, philosophy, music, literature, and the fine art of courtly manipulation. Some rose to immense power, even ruling as regents. The most famous of these was Hurrem Sultan, once a concubine, later the legal wife of Suleiman the Magnificent. She wrote letters to foreign leaders, orchestrated policy, and outmaneuvered entire councils. The woman in green turns to you. "Tell us," she says. "Why are you here?" You start to stammer an excuse. "I was summoned. I don't know. Someone left a robe," but she waves a hand. "No," she says. "Not how. Why?" You pause, and then against your better judgment you answer honestly. "I want to know what love looks like when it's not being watched." There's silence. One of the women smiles, another sighs. Then the green-robed woman nods. "Then you may stay." And suddenly, the room shifts. What follows is not a performance. It's a demonstration. A couple steps forward, masked, clothed in gauze and gold thread. They don't speak, they touch. Hands, shoulders, waists, slow, practiced, not lewd, not mechanical. It's like watching music without sound. They're showing you what longing looks like when it's allowed to unfold in its own time. The whole room watches, not hungrily, but reverently, as if witnessing something sacred. And then they stop. No climax, no applause, just stillness. The green-robed woman speaks again. "Desire is a current. You may ride it, or you may drown." She gestures to a table near the wall. On it, letters, dozens, maybe hundreds, all written by palace residents, some known, most unknown, all unsent. This is another role of the Parfum Court, to collect what cannot be said aloud, to preserve it, or destroy it. You recognise one of the letters. Your letter. The one you left in the archive. It's been copied in ink, translated and filed, marked with a symbol, a clove, and a crown. You stare at it, stunned. The green-robed woman sees your face and says, "Nothing disappears here, not even your silence." A fringe fact you never believed until now, in 17th century Istanbul, the walls of some harems were said to be hollow, Not for ventilation, but for whispers. Courtiers could speak desires into the plaster, and the walls would carry them, sometimes literally, to other chambers, other ears. It was a myth, a superstition, until you start to wonder if it's true here too. An open, scholarly debate still turns circles around the harem's true nature. Was it a prison gilded in velvet, or a throne room in disguise? Some argue it was an instrument of oppression. Others insist it was a hidden court of queens without crowns, pulling strings in silence, whispering policy in the sultan's bed. You don't know, you're just glad you were allowed in. Before you're led out, the green-robed woman places something in your hand. It's a small glass vial, stoppered, labelled in calligraphy, Yasakashk, forbidden love. You may wear it, she says, but be prepared to be recognised. Back in your chamber, you break the seal. The perfume is thick, spiced, heavy with rose and something darker underneath, maybe sandalwood, maybe secrets. You dab it at your throat, and wait. The next morning, something is different. You can feel it before your eyes even open. The air in your chamber carries a new texture, denser, warmer, charged. Not like a storm is coming, but like it already came and left something behind. You stretch slowly, and the scent of last night's perfume rises from your skin like an echo. Yasakashk, forbidden love. The name rolls around in your thoughts like a marble. You wonder what exactly you've invited by wearing it. The answer comes before breakfast. A knock at your door, not hesitant, not rushed, just official. You open it to find a tall figure in black and silver robes. No face you recognise, no crest on the shoulder. But the scroll they hand you is stamped with a seal you do know. 2 dragons curling around a lotus blossom. The Imperial Court of China. You blink. The message is simple, polite, unassuming. The Empress Dowager requests your presence at the Hall of Stillness. You will speak only when invited. Wear silence as your finest garment. You don't ask questions, you just get dressed. The journey from your wing of the palace to the Chinese apartments takes time, mostly because the architecture starts changing the closer you get. The marble grows cooler, the wood darker, older, lacquered to a mirror sheen. Paper screens replace stone walls, lanterns swing gently from ceilings painted with cranes and clouds. The palace you knew turns into something else entirely. An empire within an empire. And then the Hall of Stillness. It's nothing like the name suggests. It's enormous, grand, gilded without being gaudy, but it's quiet. So quiet you feel your own breath might be breaking the rules. In the centre of the room, a dais. Upon it, seated beneath a screen of painted blossoms, is the Empress Dowager. Not young, not smiling, not pretending to be either. She regards you with a gaze that could slice paper. Then finally she speaks. Do you know what it means to be chosen? You don't answer. She didn't invite an answer. She continues. Everyone thinks the harem is a place of pleasure. It is not. It is a machine, a slow grinding clock that tells time in wombs and whispers. She waves her hand. From behind her, a pair of eunuchs step forward, one holding a scroll, the other a lacquer box. The scroll is unfurled and your name is there. Not just your name, your movements, your assignments, your scent noted in red ink. You've been tracked. You always knew it. Now you see it. The Empress Dowager leans forward slightly. You've been wearing something you did not earn. You open your mouth to explain, to apologise, to lie, anything. But she lifts a finger. I'm not angry, she says, but I need you to understand what that perfume means here. She nods, and the eunuch opens the lacquer box. Inside, tokens, dozens, maybe hundreds, small carved jade plaques, each painted with a name and a date. This is the roster, the literal rotation. Each plaque represents a concubine, and these tokens are how the emperor chooses. Here's how it works, she explains. Each night the emperor selects a plaque. That woman is summoned. She is bathed, perfumed, clothed, escorted by eunuchs, never alone. At the foot of his bed she bows 3 times. They do what they came to do, then in the morning she returns to her chamber. If she becomes pregnant, her token is moved to a new box. You feel dizzy. It's all so deliberate. A historical fact you've read about but never fully believed now becomes very real, and in Imperial China, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, this token system governed the entire structure of the harem. Some emperors had over 100 concubines. Many women waited years to be chosen, sometimes only once. Others were chosen frequently, gaining favour and gifts, only to be cast aside after producing a child, or worse, failing too. The Empress Dowager lifts one plaque between her fingers. "This girl wore your perfume once," she says. "She was not ready." She sets the plaque down. She never returned. You don't ask what that means, you don't need to. A fringe fact flickers into your mind, one whispered during your time in the Parfum Court. Some concubines would fake illness or injury to avoid being selected. Others used herbal tinctures to delay pregnancy, or in darker cases, to end one. The penalty for such deception was death, but some still did it. Because the real danger wasn't being ignored, it was being used and then discarded. The Empress Dowager studies you again. "You don't belong to the Emperor," she says, "but you are being watched, and watched women become useful, or dead." You bow deeply, wordless, terrified, grateful, then she waves her hand again, and the eunuchs escort you out, but not back to your room. Instead, you're led to a low building near the water garden. Inside, calm, silk pillows, paper screens, a single robe folded neatly on a mat. No one speaks. A note waits for you on the cushion. Your token has not been carved, but the Emperor is curious. You sit for hours. No one comes, no one leaves. You're in limbo. An open, scholarly debate you once rolled your eyes at now feels deeply personal. Was the Emperor's selection of concubines driven by genuine desire, or purely ritual? Some argue the system was designed to prevent favoritism, to ensure political neutrality among rival clans. Others claim the Emperor's true power lay in withholding choice, making women wait, dream, decay, because control isn't always in action. Sometimes it's in delay. By nightfall, your robe has soaked in the smell of jasmine from the garden. You finally rise. No one stops you. When you return to your own chamber, another note waits. It's sealed in red. Clove does not mix with lotus. Choose wisely. There's something else. A jade token. Blank. No name, no date. Just wait. You stare at the blank token for a long time, turning it over in your palm, feeling its weight settle like a question that doesn't want an answer. Jade is supposed to be cool, but this one's warm, either from your skin or from something deeper, older. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's blank. That's the danger. In the palace, anonymity is never neutral. It's either a shield or a spotlight, and you don't know which one this is. By morning, the palace seems to know something has changed. No one says it, but you feel it. People move differently when they're speculating. The looks last a little longer. The silences feel engineered. Someone leaves a bowl of lotus seeds outside your chamber. Another leaves a sprig of clove. It's not just flirting anymore, it's testing. And then, just as your heart begins to settle, you're pulled into a new kind of madness. The Queen's belly has vanished. No baby, no blood, no burial, no explanation, just gone. The court goes feral with confusion. The king refuses to speak of it. The ladies in waiting claim they never saw her body change at all. And the physicians, cowards that they are, invent words like hysterical bloating and phantom womb. The truth? No one knows. Or if they do, they're not talking. But something else happens in the chaos. A child appears. Not a newborn. Not royal, but close enough. You first hear about it during a walk through the herb gardens. Two nurses gossiping over mint leaves. "He's too quiet," one whispers, as if someone trained the cries out of him. You pretend not to hear, but now you're listening. By dusk, the story has spread in all directions, each version more absurd than the last. Some say he's the Queen's secret bastard hidden away until the right moment. Others insist he's a decoy, borrowed from a servant family to cover up failed pregnancy. A few think he's the result of something darker. Alchemy, sorcery, or divine punishment. Everyone agrees on one thing. The king believes the child is his. You're summoned 3 days later. Quietly, no guards, no fanfare. Just a small note. You kept one secret. We think you can keep another. You follow the courier through a back stairwell, into a part of the palace that's more storage than splendour. Behind a wall of forgotten tapestries, a narrow door opens into a chamber you didn't know existed. The room is warm, bright, furnished like a nursery. And there, curled up on a red velvet cushion, is the child. He looks ordinary. Small, wide-eyed, curious, but when he sees you, he doesn't flinch, doesn't hide, he just stares. Beside him, an older woman sits with a book in her lap and a dagger in her sleeve. She nods once. He hasn't cried since we took him from the other one, she says, and that sentence hits your bones like a thrown stone. The other one? You don't ask, not yet. Instead, you walk toward the child and sit. He reaches for your robe and tugs it gently, then lays his head against your leg. You feel his breath. Steady. Warm. This isn't a game, this is a cover-up, and you're now part of it. A historical fact you were never supposed to know suddenly makes too much sense. In late 17th century Austria, a royal child was swapped at birth when the Queen suffered a fatal miscarriage. The replacement was a cousin's infant, same hair, same eyes. The deception worked for years until the child fell ill, and delirious called for a mother no one recognised. The scandal was erased from official records, but the midwife's journal survived. Barely. You're told your job is simple. Visit the child once daily. Read to him. Feed him. Leave no trace. You're to report nothing. You're to speak to no one. And if anyone asks what you're doing, you're to lie. The child is called Nico. No title, no surname. But within the week, new tapestries are ordered for his chamber. Toys from the finest artisan appear overnight, and the royal herald begins rehearsing a birth announcement. The palace wants this child to be real, but someone out there knows he isn't. A fringe fact you once read in a letter, too damaged to verify. In the early courts of northern Africa, twin children were often split, one raised in the palace, the other in the outer court, just in case one failed to thrive. The survivors would sometimes switch places as adults, confusing even their own families. Some ruled as their sibling for decades, some didn't survive the discovery. Your visits become ritual. You read stories, you feed him pomegranate seeds, you sing lullabies in 3 languages. He never cries, but he watches, always. Then one night, something changes. You arrive at his chamber to find it empty, the cushion still warm, the books gone. Instead, a letter waits, unsealed. They know. 2 words, no signature, no timestamp. You race back to your room only to find another note. This one is sealed with the wax sigil of the Parfum Court, the clove, the crown, the mirror. Inside, the Queen did not lose her child, she lost control of the story, we reclaimed it. You sit down, hard. An open scholarly debate flashes through your thoughts like lightning. How many royal heirs were truly who they claimed to be? Some historians suggest more than a few thrones were occupied by impostors. Children switched, adopted, or manipulated into power because the real bloodline faltered. Others dismiss this as conspiracy nonsense. But you've held that child, you've read him stories, you've watched him become royal, and now you understand something that chills you. Royal blood isn't just about blood, it's about belief. If enough people bow, if enough titles are rewritten, if enough portraits are painted, then fiction becomes fact. History doesn't care who was born to whom, it only cares who wins the narrative. You lie awake that night, eyes wide, every sound suddenly too loud. There's movement in the halls. Someone passes your door. A child's laugh echoes faintly down the corridor. Then silence. You don't see Nico again. Not the next day, not the next week, not ever. His chamber is cleared out before the wax from the letter has even cooled. The cushion is gone, the toys vanish. Even the tiny book of lullabies you left on the windowsill is gone without a trace. It's as if he was never there. The only proof that you didn't hallucinate the entire thing is the faint indentation in the rug where he used to sit, and the fact that you remember him. That's all you get. And it's more than most. But the silence doesn't last long, because while the baby disappears, the symptoms of a child remain. The king starts talking about lineage again. The court painter begins sketching studies of an infant heir, generic, rosy-cheeked, anonymous, and rumours begin sprouting like weeds in spring. The Queen is recovering well, the child is healthy, he smiled at the steward, he gripped the king's finger. He already has a favourite toy, a favourite nurse, a favourite godfather. All fiction, all rehearsed. And then comes the illness. Not the Queen's, not the child's, the king's. It starts with a rash, small, hidden behind his collar, then fever, then something much worse. You hear it first from a guard. The royal physician has been summoned in the dead of night 3 days in a row. The king hasn't eaten in 5. His temper is blistering. His skin is changing. and you already know what it is before anyone dares say it aloud. The French disease. No one wants to say the word syphilis. Not yet, not officially. But the signs are all there. The weight loss, the rages, the paranoia. The bruises on his arms that he insists are from fencing, though no one has seen him lift a sword in weeks. The sudden disappearances of old mistresses, of footmen, of musicians who performed too well at the wrong time. The court shifts again, you can feel it. Everyone starts moving one step further back from the throne. People speak in lower voices, touch their faces less, bow from a little farther away. You see the Queen's expression into public, calm, almost saintly, but you also know that when she kneels in the chapel now, she takes communion from a separate chalice. A historical fact that always sounded too scandalous to be true, but now feels cruelly plausible. Henry VIII's fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, was reportedly inspected by royal physicians after the marriage failed to produce passion, and one theory for the king's disinterest was that he suffered from symptoms of a venereal disease. Scholars still argue over whether it was true, but regardless, it became part of her legend. Disease in royal courts is not medical, it's reputational. The king becomes obsessed with control, he tightens court etiquette, shortens audiences, prohibits eye contact in private chambers, introduces new hygiene rituals, all of it designed to hide the thing eating away at him. You're assigned to help the royal apothecary. It's not a request, you wear gloves, you don't ask questions, you fetch herbs you've only ever read about, sarsaparilla, guaiacum, mercury powder, and boil them into thick, acrid pastes. The apothecary hands you vials of yellow-green liquid and tells you to deliver them one by one to the king's valet. You do. You never see the king, not directly, but you hear him. Through the door. The first time he's moaning. The second time sobbing. The third he's singing a lullaby. You drop the vial and run, a fringe fact you once read in the banned medical text. Mercury was once the standard treatment for syphilis in royal courts. Applied as ointment or taken in pill form, it caused everything from tooth loss to tremors to death. But it was preferred because it produced visible symptoms, sweating, blistering, foaming at the mouth. That made people believe the disease was being purged. In reality, it just killed you slightly faster than the illness did. One day, the apothecary hands you a folded note. "Deliver this to the High Chamberlain," he says, "and speak to no one." You nod. You don't read it, but something falls out of the envelope. A small slip of parchment, yellow with age, with just 2 words, "Royal Blood." You tuck it into your sleeve. That night, the king disappears from public life. The official story is exhaustion. The unofficial one is that he struck a servant for looking too long at his hands, and the servant hasn't been seen since. The Queen holds court alone now. She wears more white, speaks more softly, sits farther from the throne. She is either preparing for sainthood or for widowhood. You can't tell which. And in the background, the stories begin again. Not of kings, but of heirs. Whispers about the boy, where he's being kept, what he looks like, whether he's strong enough to survive what's coming, whether the blood in his veins will be enough to convince the court. An open, scholarly debate circles in your mind like a vulture. Did the rise of hereditary monarchy require belief more than biology? Was legitimacy ever about lineage, or was it always about optics? Some scholars argue that the concept of royal blood was a myth engineered to justify power. Others insist that even if the science was flawed, the belief itself created real dynasties, but none of them had to smear mercury paste on the back of a king's neck while listening to him forget his own name. The king doesn't die, not yet, but he recedes. Fewer appearances, more rules. Paintings retouched to show him younger, healthier. Old portraits hung to cover new absences. You receive one final vial from the apothecary. "This is not for healing," he says. "This is for hiding." You don't ask what's in it, you deliver it. You don't knock. But this time when the door opens, the king is standing there. No robe, no crown, just his skin like wax paper and eyes that no longer recognize titles. He doesn't speak. He just takes the vial, then reaches out, takes your hand and says almost gently, "Did you ever see my son?" You lie. "Yes." He nods, then shuts the door. That night, another letter appears under your door. If he dies, the boy becomes real. Do you understand what that means? It's unsigned, but the scent clinging to the parchment is unmistakable. Clove, You start to smell it everywhere. Not clove, the other scent. The raw one, acrid, metallic. It lingers on doorknobs, on the folds of velvet curtains, in the corners of empty corridors. The king is dying, whether the palace admits it or not, and death has a smell. It seeps through the cracks in the crown, into the threadwork of court ritual, until even the flowers in the vases look like they're holding their breath. You pass people who won't meet your eyes. You see servants scrubbing the same marble floor for the third time in an hour. The tapestries are being dusted more often, as if death might not settle on a clean wall. But you know better. You've seen this kind of rot before, slow, sour, clinging to silk like mildew. And in the middle of it all, the clove. Everywhere you go now, it follows. Not always strong, never overwhelming, but always there, curling around candle flames, settling into your pillows, even seeping into your bread at breakfast. Someone's watching you, still, maybe more closely than ever, and they want you to know it. Which is why you're not surprised when you're summoned, not by a courtier, not by a servant, but by an old woman in travelling robes, her hands hennaed, her eyes unreadable. They're waiting, she says. She doesn't say who. You follow her through the western wing into a tower you thought was sealed. The stairs spiral for so long your legs ache by the time you reach the top. At the summit, a door carved with vines and wings opens to a room full of smoke, and herbs, and bottles, hundreds of them, all shapes, all colours, some glowing faintly, some bubbling, some sealed with wax as dark as dried blood. And standing at the centre of this madness is a woman in a velvet robe the colour of bruises. You recognise her. Not her face. She's masked. But the scent. Clove. "Welcome," she says. "You've been steeping in stories. Let's see which one's stuck." This is where the palace hides its secrets. Not its gossip, not its scandals. Those are for the court. This is where it hides the truth. The raw ingredients. The things that make people powerful or foolish or very, very dead. The woman gestures to the shelves. "Everything you think you know," she says, "started in one of these bottles." You're not sure whether to laugh or bow, so you just stand there. She lifts a small vial and uncorks it. Instantly the air fills with something warm and floral. Your stomach twists, not from disgust, but from memory. It smells like the prince's sleeve the night he vanished. "You thought you were clever," she says, "but you were just a step behind." She points to another bottle, this one filled with something thick and golden. "Desire," she says, "not a metaphor, a recipe." You blink. She smiles. "You think the Parfum Court only deals in seduction? That we only scent handkerchiefs and send anonymous love notes? We shape outcomes. One drop of the right oil on a neck and a duke changes allegiance. One inhalation of the right vapour, and a queen dreams of a son she never carried." You step closer. On the work table, vials are labelled with words like loyalty, obsession, amnesia, courage. One bottle is marked heir, and that one is empty. A historical fact that now seems more relevant than any scroll in the royal library. In Renaissance Venice, perfumers were sometimes trained apothecaries, experts in plants, chemistry and poisons. Their shops sold not just scents, but tinctures capable of killing lovers, calming tempers, or erasing memories. At least 3 Venetian nobles are believed to have been manipulated by such concoctions into signing away inheritances. No one could prove it, but the timing was always perfect. The masked woman picks up a vial that glows faintly violet. "This," she says, "is recognition. You wear it, and anyone who's seen you once will believe they've known you for years. Makes forged heirs easier to sell." She places it in your hand. It's warm. The glass is etched with that same cloven crown sigil. You finally ask her, "Why me?" She laughs, a real deep laugh. "Because you're useful," she says. "Because you're forgettable when you need to be. Memorable when you shouldn't be. Because you watched a king unravel and didn't scream. Because you touched a lie and called it a child." You say nothing. She steps close. Her breath smells like wine and ash. "And because you still don't know who I am." You almost ask. She doesn't let you. Instead, she uncorks another bottle, a sharp, peppery scent that makes your nose twitch. "Tonight," she says, "a duke will try to poison the queen. This will make her immune. You'll deliver it." You blink. "Why me?" "Because she won't question you," she says. "Not anymore." You take the bottle. "You're helping her." The woman smiles under her mask. "I'm helping stability." fringe fact echoes in the back of your mind. During the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan, court perfumers created truth elixirs, substances meant to be worn during diplomatic negotiations to evoke trust. No one remembers the ingredients, but records mention that just inhaling the scent made men cry, confess, and surrender terms they never meant to give. None of those perfumers survived the end of the dynasty. You leave the tower with the bottle hidden in your robe. You walk directly to the Queen's chamber. Her guards let you pass without question. She looks tired, but sharper than before, like someone who's shed the weight of pretending. You hand her the bottle. She doesn't ask what it is. She just nods, applies it to her throat, then to her wrists. "You know," she says, "I never told them the child was mine. They told me." You hesitate. She continues, "But when the world wants something to be true, it becomes true." You almost ask her what happened to the real baby. You don't, because you already know she wouldn't answer. An open, scholarly debate surfaces again, too late to be comforting. Is truth in royal history about facts or consensus? Some historians argue that the stories we believe about monarchs survive not because they're accurate, but because they're useful, because they hold the line, because they keep the palace standing. And you're starting to realise you are now one of the people holding it up. That night at court, the Duke makes his toast. The Queen drinks, the crowd applauds, no one dies. At least not yet. Back in your room, you find a final vial resting on your pillow. No label, just a note. For when you decide who you want to become, you don't open the vial, not yet. It sits on your dressing table, like a question waiting for an answer you're not ready to give. It's not fear that keeps your hand still, it's the weight of choice. Because you know now that scent isn't just perfume in this palace. It's personality. It's permission. It's prophecy. You wear the wrong one, and suddenly you're someone else. Or worse, you become who they've decided you are. So instead of breaking the seal, you stare at it every night, and every morning, and every time you walk past the mirror and catch yourself looking like a stranger in your own skin. Days pass, the king doesn't die, not publicly, but he disappears. Entire wings of the palace are closed off, no trumpets, no funerals, no black ribbons, just coconuts. A long, heavy countenance that smells like camphor and disappointment. And then, from the east, the church arrives. 4 cardinals, 2 bishops, a man called the papal auditor, who walks like someone used to watching people burn for incorrect phrasing. They come not for the king, but for the child, the boy who may or may not be the product of royal blood and perfume suggestion. The Vatican wants proof, a blessing, a signature, a declaration that heaven itself has no objections to the baby that now somehow controls the future. You're summoned again, but this time not by the court, by them. You walk into the chapel at dusk, called there by a note written in clean Latin script. The cardinals are already inside, their red robes catching candlelight like fire. The boy is there too, Nico, though no one uses that name anymore. He's been given a new one now, longer, formal, bloated with heritage. His hair has been curled, his cheeks lightly powdered. He looks like a painting of a prince. He looks like the lie he's become. They want you to swear. That's why you're here. You who once fed him pomegranate seeds and whispered nonsense songs into his ear. You who saw his real eyes, soft and unassuming and human. They want you to kneel in front of God and say, yes, this is the son of the king and queen. I witnessed the birth, I held the afterbirth, I watched the stars tilt to accommodate his coming. And you understand something then. The church doesn't care about truth, they care about consistency. You look at the boy. He doesn't blink, he doesn't smile. He looks at you like someone halfway between memory and obedience. Maybe he remembers you. Maybe he doesn't. Doesn't matter. They ask the question, the big one, the irreversible one, and you answer, you lie. Because you have to. Because you've seen what happens to people who don't. Because truth is not what keeps this place running. Sanctioned truth is. They nod, they smile, they bless him. The church will endorse the child, the documents will be inked. The lineage will be declared valid, the chapel bells will ring, the kingdom will celebrate. But you know the cost of that sound. A historical fact you once dismissed as legend flashes in your mind. In 14th century Avignon, during the height of papal influence, one cardinal was accused of blessing a royal heir, known to be a bastard. The penalty should have been excommunication. Instead, he was promoted. Why? Because the heir brought peace between 2 warring duchies. because the truth was less valuable than the outcome. Back in your chamber, you find a parcel waiting. It's wrapped in white linen, tied with a crimson ribbon. Inside, a rosary made of crushed cloves and black pearls, a scent so rich it almost makes you dizzy. Alongside it, a letter. Congratulations, you are now a guardian of the myth. You want to be sick, but instead you hang the rosary beside your bed. A fringe fact once whispered to you by an herbalist in the lower gardens crawls back into your head. There are certain perfumed resins used in religious ceremonies, not to mask sin, but to absorb it. To take on the scent of confession, so the sinner leaves clean and the object bears the weight. You wonder how much your rosary can hold. The next morning you're summoned not to the Queen, but to the papal auditor. Alone, he's seated in the royal library, surrounded by books no one reads. He doesn't greet you, doesn't look up, just gestures to the scroll on the table. It's a record. Your movements, your alliances. Your visits to the child, your time in the Parfum court, even your conversation with the king, it's all there, signed by witnesses, annotated in the margins. You've been useful, he says, but your usefulness must now be tested. You wait. He uncaps a bottle. The scent is sharp, astringent, unfamiliar. This is called Fides. It's an experimental formula. Truth serum, more or less. Distilled from holy oil and the petals of a flower that only grows in places where people die confessing. He pours a single drop onto his fingertip and holds it toward you. You hesitate. He smiles. Don't worry, he says. If you've been honest, you have nothing to fear. You take the drop, swallow. It burns, not like fire, like clarity. Your mouth tastes like something you forgot in childhood. Ashes, perhaps. Or the moment before a fever breaks. He asks you the same question the cardinals did. You look him in the eye, and you lie again. But this time it hurts. It feels like your throat is being scrubbed raw from the inside out. Like your own words are trying to escape you. You manage to stay upright, to keep your face calm, but your vision blurs. He watches, then nods. You've passed, he says. Loyalty is indistinguishable from faith. He dismisses you. You stumble back to your quarters. The vial on your table is still unopened, but this time you do unstop it. The scent inside is impossible to define. It smells like everything you've ever regretted. You dab it on your throat, and sleep like someone who no longer owns their own name. You wake up with someone else's memory in your mouth. It's sweet and metallic, like blood stirred into honey, like you bit your lip while dreaming and liked the taste too much to wake. The vial lies emptied on your table. You don't remember applying it again. You don't remember anything after the drop. Just a dream, too vivid, too warm. Someone whispered your name, not the one you were given, not the one you go by now, the other name, the one you buried a long time ago when you realised that in royal palaces, identity is a currency, and you're only ever a few bad decisions away from bankruptcy. And the dream, gods, the dream! Someone touched you like they knew the shape of your spine better than you did, like your ribs were a prayer they wanted to memorise. There was a kiss, several, but none of them ended. They just looped, over and over, a reel of wanton softness. No politics, no power, just breath and skin. You wash your face 3 times, but the dream stays. The scent clings and the palace feels different today. Less tense, less brittle, more awake. Word spreads fast, though officially nothing has changed. The king is still resting. The child is still healthy. The queen is still grieving joyfully, whatever that means. But the hierarchy is already shifting. Rooms are being reassigned. Old families are petitioning for alliances. And someone has started drawing up betrothal contracts for a boy who hasn't even started teething. And then, like a bad penny wrapped in velvet, she returns. Queen Christina of Sweden, exiled, eccentric, unmarried, unapologetic. She arrives without a retinue. Just a single white horse, a sword on her hip, and a letter of invitation sealed by the Holy Roman Emperor himself. No one's sure what she's doing here. Some think she's here to bless the new heir. Others whisper she's here to replace the Queen. You don't believe any of it, because you know Christina doesn't deal in politics, she deals in chaos. A historical fact that no one repeats too loudly. Queen Christina of Sweden abdicated her throne, refused to marry, and converted to Catholicism in a country that invented new insults for Catholic converts. She was rumoured to have affairs with both men and women, wore men's clothing regularly, and kept company with philosophers, spies, and more than one assassin. She had a bedchamber with only one bed and several closets, each one locked, each one hiding something different. The night she arrives, the court throws a dinner. Not a welcome, not a celebration, a cantonnement. You're seated at the far end of the hall, close enough to see her, but not close enough to speak. She wears crimson, no corset. Her hair is wild, her smile too direct for this place. She drinks from a silver flask, not a goblet. And she doesn't bow to anyone, not even the Queen, especially not the Queen. They lock eyes for 3 seconds. You count them. Then Christina grins and lifts her glass. "To secrets, yes," she says. No one toasts back. Later you find yourself in the East Garden, escaping the noise. You shouldn't be alone, you know better. But the scent of jasmine calms you. The night air presses against your skin like cool cloth. And then, footsteps. Christina appears beside you like smoke. No entourage, no fanfare, just her. A cloak of black fur, and the scent of cloves, stronger than yours, sharper. "Beautiful night," she says, like your old friends. You nod. She squints at you. You smell like someone who's been compromised by someone interesting. You almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you ask, "Why are you really here?" She shrugs. "To see if the lie will hold. To see if anyone still remembers how to tell the truth." You blink. "Which lie?" She grins. "Exactly." She pulls something from her sleeve. A folded letter. You recognize the handwriting instantly. Your own. One of your notes. One of the ones you thought you destroyed. She hands it to you. "The Parpham Court's archives have holes. I've been patching them." You open the letter. You barely remember writing it. But the words are familiar, raw, honest. "I have never been kissed for who I am, only for what I might become." You fold it again. Christina looks at you with a kind of detached warmth. You could still leave, you know, run, reinvent. There's a ship leaving for Constantinople in 2 days, and I can put your name on the manifest. You stare at her. "Why would you help me?" She smiles. "Because I like watching systems break, and because I think you still remember what freedom smells like." A fringe fact you remember too late. When Christina fled Sweden, she disguised herself as a man and crossed 3 borders with forged papers, smuggled letters, and a knife sewn into her boots. She arrived in Rome penniless and exhausted, and within a year had Pope Alexander VII eating out of her hand. You think about it, really think. Then you shake your head. "Not yet," you say. Christina nods. "Not never, though." She walks away. You return to your chamber to find it different. Nothing has moved, and yet everything has. On your bed, a cloak, fur-lined, smelling of cold air and horses, underneath it another letter. This one unsigned, but you know the pen. "One day we will no longer need disguises. Until then, keep yours clean." Next to it, a small bottle, this one labelled Metamorphosis. An open scholarly debate suddenly blooms in your thoughts. Was Christina truly a revolutionary, or just another monarch who refused to play by the script written for her gender? Some argue she was a progressive force, redefining what queenship could be. Others claim she was a narcissist, reckless, indulgent, drunk on freedom no one else could afford. The truth, as always, lives in the contradictions. You hold the bottle up to the candlelight. The liquid inside shifts colour as you move it. Green, then gold, then violet. Like a bruise healing in reverse. You don't open it. Not yet, but you keep it close, because you know now that in the palace, survival isn't about loyalty. It's about knowing when to become someone else. You almost get away with it. The shifting identities, the sealed vials, the nods from masked women, in corridors that aren't on any map, you juggle it all like a pro. By now, your face carries no expression unless you choose to wear one, and your voice can shape itself to match whatever the room demands. You've become a shadow that leaves a scent, a whisper in silk, someone important but never quite visible. It's a strange kind of power, and it keeps you safe, until the day the letters start going missing. It begins quietly. First, it's just a single note, one you tucked behind a brick in the garden wall, part of your informal correspondence with one of the Queen's oldest ladies-in-waiting. You've both been exchanging little truths, just observations, nothing overt. Then another goes missing from your room. Then one more. never received by its intended friend in the Eastern kitchens. No one says anything out loud. But now there are gaps in conversations where there used to be smiles. People stop making eye contact. The courtiers begin behaving like prey. Then finally a letter arrives. Unsealed, crisp, cold. One more word and she dies. No signature. But the implication is clear. Someone is watching and someone knows. The court can tolerate seduction, lies, perfumes, illusions. But treason? That they cannot ignore. Or rather, they can ignore it until it becomes inconvenient. You don't sleep that night, and when you finally do, it's only because you collapse into unconsciousness. When you wake, the light is different. Off, wrong, and so is the air. There's something on fire, not the palace, not the wing, just you. It's the scent, not one you've worn before, not one from the parfum court or any masked meeting. This one is raw, unfiltered, painfully real. It smells like burnt paper and blood, and that's when it happens, the arrest. It's quiet, painless. They don't use chains, they don't shout. 3 men in dark robes enter your chamber at dawn. One reads from a scroll, the others escort you to a tower that no longer has windows. The smell of ash trails you the entire way. Your charge? Not theft, not blasphemy. Seduction with intent to betray. It's an old law, rarely invoked, but real. You're being accused of sleeping with someone close to the throne, someone with access, someone who might talk when they shouldn't. You know exactly who they mean, the lady in waiting, the one with the pale hands and the sharp memory. You also know you never touched her. Not like that, not officially, not the way the law means, but you wrote her letters, dozens, too many. One of them must have reached the wrong hand. They give you 1 day to confess. You're told you'll be spared if you name others, if you explain what you were doing, if you say it was lust, or madness, or confusion, or a joke. You say nothing. You're taken to the Hall of Blades. No one's been executed there in your lifetime. Not publicly. It's a ceremonial space now used for theatrical punishments, forced retirements, symbolic shaming. But it can still be used. They place you in the centre of the marble floor. The queen is there. So is the child. He watches with interest, chewing the corner of his sash. So is the woman whose letters you answered. Her face is blank, her knuckles white. The court is filled with people who say they don't know you. The priest reads your charge. You're accused of manipulating royal servants to access confidential information, of using personal influence to steer conversations in the perfume court, of forging intimacy to gather secrets, of seducing someone for the purpose of political sabotage. You are not asked to deny it. You are asked to explain it, and you do something no one expects. You laugh. Because really, what can you say? That you loved her? That the words mattered more than the palace? That the scent of her ink haunts your dreams more than the scent of your own skin? That you were lonely in a way that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with not being seen? You tell them nothing. They interpret it as guilt. The sentence is exile. Not death, not yet. They escort you to the southern gate. They remove your name from the court roster. They strip you of scent, literally. You're made to bathe in vinegar and salt in front of an entire room of silent officials until no perfume clings to you. It feels like drowning. You smell like nothing, not even yourself. A historical fact you now understand in your bones. In 16th century Florence, women accused of political seduction were bathed in sour wine and paraded through public squares. The ritual was meant to strip them of their scent, their power, their influence. But some still returned years later, wearing new names, new faces, new perfumes, ghosts of the past dressed in flowers. You're taken to the edge of the forest, given a cloak, a loaf of bread, and a single sealed vial, no label, no note. You recognise the wax seal, though, the clove in the mirror. A final gift from the parfum court. As you step into the trees, you finally understand you weren't exiled because of what you did. You were exiled because of what you knew. A fringe fact you once laughed off in a tavern. Some courts didn't execute their traitors. They exported them, let them carry dangerous knowledge into other kingdoms, let them rot in exile, watched by foreign eyes, always hunted, never quiet. A threat that never quite dies, but never thrives either. You walk deeper into the trees. You don't know where you're going, but the vial burns warm in your hand. You keep it sealed, for now, because you know that when you open it, everything will change. You do not die in the woods. That's the first surprise. You don't starve, don't freeze, don't get dragged off by wolves or assassins, or the weight of your own despair. Instead, you live, quietly, carefully, like a secret with legs. You find a village that doesn't ask questions. You learn how to gather herbs, how to braid rope, how to sleep with a knife under your pillow and still wake up soft. But you're never just a villager. Not really. You still sleep like someone who might be hunted. You still walk like a courtier, shoulders back, chin tilted. Hands precise. You say please and thank you in a dozen languages, and you count exits whenever you enter a room. The scent of clove never quite leaves your thoughts, even though you haven't worn perfume in weeks, and the vial, still sealed, rests against your ribs like a heartbeat. Months pass, maybe years. You lose track, but you hear whispers. From travellers, merchants, soldiers on leave. The palace is still standing. The king is officially declared dead. The child, your child in a way, is crowned heir under a new regency council. The queen is now the dowager, cloaked in eternal white, and the Parfum court still active, so it's still powerful. Still impossible to pin down. You hear rumours of an attempted poisoning, another of a miraculous recovery. One story claims the boy glows in the dark and has dreams in Latin. Another insists he has no shadow. You smile at each tale and keep walking. And then, one day, a letter finds you. No address, no seal, just folded parchment tied to the leg of a grey pigeon. You open it. He's asking questions about you. Come home. You burn the letter, but you don't forget it. And when the second pigeon arrives, days later, this one with a small vial tied to its leg, you know the game has started again, because the vial smells like smoke and violets, and only one place in the world makes that scent. Modern royalty, it turns out, still plays by old rules, just with better lighting and newer lies. When you return, you do it through the servants' gate. Not the grand arch, not the glittering courtyard. You wear the grey of a widow, a face no one remembers. The guards let you pass with a nod. You keep your eyes low, but your spine straight as ever. Inside, the palace has changed. There's electricity now, security cameras, cell phones, the sound of notifications and polished shoes echoing in marble halls. The chandeliers still drip with crystal, but the light bulbs inside hum like wasps. The paintings are the same, but the frames have been cleaned. The walls no longer whisper, now they record. You find a room, a disguise, a title, historical consultant. It's perfect. No one questions the presence of someone who corrects plaques and footnotes. No one sees the danger in someone who just knows too much. You walk the halls freely. And when you're alone, you touch the edges of memories like bruises. The boy is nearly grown now. He walks like royalty, talks like royalty, even smells like royalty. Some perfumer has clearly been training him. His signature scent, sandalwood and black pepper with a hint of salt air. Carefully engineered to evoke nobility with a touch of vulnerability. It's brilliant and fake and perfect. You don't approach him, not at first, but he sees you. The second day you're there, he passes you in the Eastern Gallery. Pauses, tilts his head. You look like someone my nurse used to tell stories about. You smile. She must have had a vivid imagination. He nods, but his eyes linger. That night, a note arrives under your door. I found one of your letters. So he knows, or suspects, you don't sleep. Because if he's reading your old letters, he's already closer to the truth than anyone wants him to be. And if he remembers anything, if there's some spark of recognition, some trace of the songs you used to hum, then the palace is about to get very dangerous again. A historical fact you've always loved. When Napoleon was exiled to Elba, he was allowed to keep a staff. Among them was a valet who'd once been a spy. He recorded every conversation, every cough, every sleepless night. And when Napoleon escaped and returned to power, that spy was rewarded. With land, with titles, with silence. You know what that means. He may be a boy still, but he's not powerless. And you're back inside the lion's den, except now it has Wi-Fi. You keep to the edges of court life, where the real decisions are still made, behind soundproof doors, in curated scent labs. The Parfum court still exists, just hidden behind corporate front offices and research grants. Their perfume formulas are stored on encrypted drives now, but the old codes still apply. A clove for silence, a rose for betrayal, vetiver for death. You start smelling familiar combinations again. The old language, updated for modern tongues. And the boy, soon to be king, keeps circling you. One day he stops you after a public tour. You wrote, didn't you? He asks. Those stories, the ones hidden in the archive. I recognize your words. You stare at him. Why would you be reading those? He shrugs. Because everyone around me lies. except the ghosts. A fringe fact you once dismissed but now believe with your whole body. Certain perfumes are designed to trigger memory. Not just scent memory, but emotional recall, joy, grief, longing, panic. Smell is the only sense directly wired to memory in the brain, and the parfum court uses it like a scalpel. You wonder what they've been using on him. You answer the prince carefully. I've written many things, some true, some not. He nods. Just want to know who I am. And you, God's help you, you say, don't we all? An open, scholarly debate still echoes across every elite academic forum and pop culture docuseries. In a world where monarchy survives only by branding, is a royal ever a person, or just a symbol? A container for nostalgia, patriotism, fantasy? The more polished they become, the less human they appear. But if they stop polishing, they shatter. You sit with that for a long time, because this boy, the one everyone is calling the future, is already being packaged. You see it in the interviews, the media training, the documentary cameras following him down curated hallways. They are trying to make him both accessible and untouchable, timeless and marketable. But you remember the child with no name who once held your sleeve with soft fingers and didn't cry. You still have the empty vial. You've never refilled it, but you carry it, every day, because you know the real power isn't in the perfume. It's in the moment before it's applied, when you decide who you want to be. It starts with a smell. Not a perfume this time. Something darker, more primal. Smoke, not the gentle kind that curls from incense or sandalwood braziers, but the sharp, angry kind that lingers in fabric and throats. You catch it on the 3rd floor, near the portrait gallery. Then again in the chapel. Then again, strongest in the West Wing's sealed hallway. The one they never reopened after the king's final disappearance. You're not the only one who notices. People begin whispering. Staff members look over their shoulders. The lights flicker more often. Even the walls feel colder. A maid finds ash scattered in the linen closet, fine as silk, and a valet reports hearing music in the dead of night. A single piano note played over and over until it stops and leaves the silence louder than before. And then the child sees something. You're with him when it happens. He's taller now, older than you imagined he'd be at this age. Sharper. Eyes like polished glass, but still touched with wonder in the right light. You're walking through the old archive corridor, pointing out sections that used to hold parchments now replaced with sterile digital storage when he stops. Do you smell that? He asks. You do. Clove, burnt wax, a trace of myrrh, and something else. Rot. He turns his head slowly, like a bird catching the shift of wind before a storm. Then he reaches out and touches the wall. The panel shudders under his hand, not moves, shudders. Like something inside it is breathing. You both step back, and just like that, the scent vanishes. Later that night you do something you haven't done in years. You go back to the first vial, the one they gave you in Exile, the one with the clove and mirror seal. You unstop it and inhale, deeply. It doesn't smell like safety. It smells like warning. You lie down anyway and dream again. But this time it isn't memory or longing. It's the king. He's standing in the mirror across the room, skin waxen, eyes hollow, wearing the wrong crown. One too small, too old. He raises his hand and opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. You wake up gasping. There's ash on your pillow. You try to play it off, call it stress, a dream, your own mind unravelling after too many years inside too many lies. But then the prince finds you again, this time in the atrium, under a skylight filtered by fog. He doesn't greet you, doesn't bow. He just says, "She's been visiting me at night." You hesitate. "The Queen?" He shakes his head. "Not the Queen." He won't say more. And you know then that it's begun. The ghosts are back. A historical fact buried deep in a courtier's diary, passed through whispers. Certain palaces are known for it. For the echoes. For the footsteps no one owns. Versailles, Schönbrunn, and the Alhambra. It isn't just creaks or moans, it's presence. Whole moments that replay without permission. Fragments of grief that loop like broken music boxes. And always, always after death has been denied too long. The prince's face is pale now and tired. He doesn't sleep through the night. He says the walls talk to him, that they remember things wrong on purpose, that he smells people before he sees them, and not the living kind. You start to find objects misplaced. A crown on the wrong pedestal, a candle relit in a room that no one has entered. A letter written in your own hand, but a style you haven't used since your earliest days in court. Then one morning there's a new plaque beside the king's old throne. It says, plainly, His Majesty still present. No one put it there, and no one removes it. By now you've stopped denying what's happening. The palace is haunted, not by chains and howls and shadows slipping down stone halls. No, it's haunted by memory. By too many rewritten stories, by too many lies nailed into the walls like sacred truths. A fringe fact you never told anyone. In a hidden vault under the Spanish court in the 1600s, a priest was found bound in silk ribbons, blindfolded with royal seal-printed cloth dead of fear. The room contained no weapon, no sign of violence. So, just the smell of oranges and iron, and a single sentence carved into the stone. The history lied too well. You're beginning to think history is starting to talk back, and still the rituals continue. The coronation approaches. The boy, no, the man now, is days away from ascending. The cameras are ready, the people are watching, the perfumes are chosen. His scent for the ceremony, oak moss, amber, and a rare blue rose oil reserved for divinely sanctioned kings. But he finds you the night before, he's shaking. They want me to say his name during the anointing. Whose name, you ask, already knowing? My father's, the real one, not the story. You don't answer, because what would you say? He paces. What happens if I do, if I break the script? He looks at you like you might save him. I don't want to become a myth, he says. You reach into your pocket. You give him your last vial, the one marked Metamorphosis. This will let you choose what you say. For a moment. A breath. A heartbeat. You'll be free. He takes it. Doesn't ask what it does, doesn't ask if it's safe. The next morning, the sun rises grey and gold, the coronation begins. The music plays, the public smiles. The Dowager Queen looks carved from pearl. You stand in the gallery watching. They hand him the vial to anoint himself. He takes a breath, and then he reaches into his pocket, uses yours instead. The scent rises, sharp, sweet, strange, impossible to place. The crowd stills, even the priests blink. But no one stops the ceremony. He's crowned in seance, and for one perfect moment the scent is everywhere. And it smells like him, not the myth, not the heir, just him. And then it fades. The cameras resume, the rituals conclude, but something's shifted. The palace holds its breath. Because ghosts don't haunt places out of anger, they haunt them out of recognition. They stay where they once mattered. And now, so do you. You don't leave the palace after the coronation. You think you will. You pack a small satchel. You collect the few remaining vials that haven't cracked or evaporated over time. You even write a letter. No name, no farewell, just a soft thank you to no one in particular. But when the morning comes, and the fog curls against the windows like it's trying to warn you, you stay, because you need to see if it held. The metamorphosis, the myth-breaking, the impossible act of choosing to be real in a place where reality has always been curated like a wine list. You linger near the fringes of the new court. The prince, now king, wears the crown a little differently. Not looser, not tighter, just aware, like he knows what it means to hold power that was never truly his, and yet fully is. Like he's not sure whether the weight on his head is inheritance or performance, and still he carries it. And the scent? It's his now. You recognise it instantly, because it's not one of the old ones, not one crafted by the Parfum court or dredged up from ancestral archives, not a copy of his father's, or a calculated blend of legacy and propaganda. It's salt and sage and iron, the sea at low tide, warmth after a storm, and something bitter at the edges, like truth. People start calling it the scent of sovereignty. They bottle it, of course, sell it in numbered flacons to the adoring public. The marketing describes it as modern masculinity tempered with memory, which makes you laugh out loud in the hallway the first time you read it. But he never wears it in public, only in private, where truth lives, where ghosts still walk. Yes, still, because the hauntings haven't stopped. If anything, they've deepened. You find fragments in the palace more and more often. Torn lace from a dress no one's worn in a century, a goblet still cold on a table untouched for days, a crown made of glass that vanishes when you try to show anyone. You hear piano notes played from empty ballrooms. You find mirrors that fog on their own. The king doesn't flinch at any of it. Sometimes you think he sees them too, sometimes you think he is one. You begin writing again, not reports, not letters, just accounts of what's real, of what isn't, of what the palace pretends not to remember. Your journal becomes a patchwork of memory and metaphor, inked in borrowed languages. You record scents like other people record dates. The arrival of myrrh near the treasury, a patchouli bloom near the north gate, cedarwood in the west wing, a warning, and everywhere still that stubborn undercurrent of clove. Not as strong as it once was, but present. Still watching, still waiting. And then, one night, months after the coronation, you are called. Not summoned, not ordered. Just called. You wake before dawn. Dress in silence, follow your feet through hallways you forgot you remembered. Past the library, past the chapel. Past the room where you first saw the king weep and the one where he forgot his own name. To the greenhouse. And she's there. The masked woman in velvet. Still alive, still tall, still impossible to read. You haven't seen her since the Exile. "You've done well," she says, as if you've just returned from a brief errand and not years of navigating a palace built on lies. You nod. He made his choice. She tilts her head. He made a choice. That's not the same. You say nothing. She opens a small drawer in one of the greenhouse tables, pulls out a vial the size of your thumb. The liquid inside is black. Not ink, not oil, something denser. "Last one," she says. You take it, and you know instantly what it is. Oblivion, a formula you read about once in a scorched page tucked behind a loose stone in the Parfum Court's east chamber. A scent that unbinds memory, that lets you walk away from your own story, not to forget, but to no longer be bound by remembering. "You'll know when to use it," she says. She disappears into the mist. And you are alone again. A historical fact, almost too poetic to be real. In ancient Mesopotamia, kings were once crowned twice, once for the people, once for the winds. The second ceremony was private, symbolic. It was said that during this rite, the king shed his name, walked backward through his own life, and emerged as something both more and less than human. The ceremony always ended with fire. You return to your quarters, you place the vial beside your bed. You don't use it, not yet, because before you leave this palace, for good, for memory, for myth, you want to see one more thing. You want to see if he lasts. If a king made of perfume and politics and whispered lies can survive the storm of being real, then you want to see if the ghosts stay. Because maybe, just maybe, they're not here to haunt. Maybe they're here to witness. An open scholarly debate stirs again. Is royalty performance or responsibility? Can a ruler born of fabrication become more true than those born of blood? Does lineage matter more than choice, or is it all just smoke, mirrors, and beautifully bottled lies? You look out the window. The king walks alone in the courtyard. No guards, no audience, just him, the scent of salt and storm trails behind him. And when he turns to look at the window where you stand, just for a moment, he smiles. Not the smile of someone who owns the world. The smile of someone who knows what it cost. And maybe, in that moment, he's free. So are you. You never use the last vial. It sits there, untouched, gathering dust the way memory does when you stop revisiting it. You think about it sometimes, in the early hours before the palace wakes, when everything feels suspended between sleep and duty. But you don't reach for it, because forgetting would mean erasing the parts of yourself that survived, not just the ones that hurt. The king rules, quietly, steadily. His myth softens, reshaped not by decrees or campaigns, but by the simple act of staying real. He doesn't try to be his father, or the version of himself the church once approved. He just chooses. Again and again he chooses truth when it costs him, silence when it protects others, and kindness when it's inconvenient. And you, well, you still walk the halls, no longer a ghost, no longer a secret, just someone who was there. When the next coronation comes, a ceremonial renewal, now televised and reperfumed, you watch from the back of the room, not because you have to, because you want to, because now, finally, you understand something the palace never taught you, but the ghosts always tried to whisper. History isn't written by the winners, it's written by the ones who remember with care. As the anthem swells and the scent of sage and salt floods the space once more, You step quietly outside. The wind carries it with you. A new scent, a new chapter, a new kind of crown. You breathe it in, you smile, and you walk. Not away, but forward,